pondered. Li Chen's cold voice rang in her ears. Miss Hannah, go call young Master Lance over. Miss Hannah's heart sank. Indeed, with Mon's escape, how could young Master Lance not know? She opened her mouth to say something, but upon meeting Li Chen's icy gaze, she couldn't get the words out and could only sulkily run off to fetch young Master Lance. However, when she returned to Li Chen's side, she not only brought young Master Lance but also summoned Knight Leo. Li Chen glanced at Knight Leo, who shrugged with a somewhat helpless expression, as if to say that this was still his former superior and he couldn't just ignore the trouble. Li Chen withdrew his gaze to look at young Master Lance, who had changed significantly during this time. His face had darkened considerably and his body had become more robust, losing the appearance of a noble young master and resembling an old farmer who often worked the fields. Seeing him like this, Li Chen's anger dissipated somewhat. This guy hadn't caused any trouble since coming under his command and had focused on farming, seemingly accustomed to life here, making him a model of reformation. Before fleeing, Mond would surely have informed him to escape together, but now that he was still here, it indicated his stance. However, how to handle this matter would depend on the upcoming questioning. Do you have anything to say to me? Li Chen gave him the opportunity to explain, allowing him to formulate his answer before responding. Young Master Lance slowly knelt on the ground, his expression very calm. My lord, I am the son of a noble from the kingdom of Sassos. My family's fief is near the kingdom, and I am among the most powerful of the powerful. My lord, the borders of the Sarsos kingdom adjoin the monster forest. With your current momentum, it won't be long before you confront the kingdom. You need to understand the kingdom's political, military, and cultural landscape, as well as the composition of its various families. This knowledge is something only someone like me, who has received noble education since childhood, can provide. After saying this, he fell silent. Li Chen's brows twitched at these words. This young Master Rans was indeed a clever man. He didn't engage in any evasive arguments but directly stated his value, and that value truly stirred Li Chen's interest. The human kingdom was his future enemy, and understanding their tactical layout for the future would be very beneficial. The monster forest was wild and untamed, and he had no other way to find a second core noble of the human world. Thus, the value of young Master Rans was exceedingly precious. While he was deep in thought, Miss Hannah kept signaling to Knight Leo, who twitched his lips in response. He understood what Miss Hannah meant. She wanted him to plead for young Master Rans. He recalled that he had done quite well under young Master Rans's father in the past, and young Master Rans had treated him well too. With a sigh, he pleaded with Li Chen, My lord, I am willing to forfeit my military achievements from this battle. Please spare young Master Rans's life. Li Chen looked at Knight Leo for confirmation. Are you sure this is worth it? Knight Leo nodded helplessly. After all, young Master Rans is my lord. I cannot watch him die. However, he squatted down to meet young Master Rans's gaze. Young Master, after this, we will owe each other nothing. I hope we can dissolve our lord-vassal relationship, if that's all right. In young Master Rans's eyes, there was 40% bitterness, 30% helplessness, 20% relief, and 10% hope for the future. Knight Leo, your family has put you in this situation, and yet you are still willing to do so much for me. I am already very grateful. From now on, you are a free man. Please take care of me in the future, Uncle Leo. The two exchanged a glance and smiled, then turned to Li Chen. In truth, even if Knight Leo had not given up his military achievements, Li Chen would not have killed young Master Rans. But this was a way to give him an out. He spoke, in that case, I pardon young Master Rans for his failure to report, and Knight Leo, your military achievements in this battle are waived. If you can accept this, we can all go our separate ways. The few of them bowed to Li Chen and left. Li Chen was very tired after handling the tribe's affairs, so he returned to the luxurious wooden house, removed his armor and weapons, took a comfortable hot bath, and lay down on the fur bed to rest. Before falling into a deep sleep, his mind raced as he contemplated the issues exposed by Butler Mon's escape. The tribe currently consisted of goblins, dog-headed people, humans, and ogres, which meant there were for different languages, especially with the ogres whose communication involved body language as well. The tribe members could not communicate effectively at all. Right now, the tribe was small, and with Miss Hannah as a translator, they could barely manage. But what about in the future when the tribe's numbers reach tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands? The tribe needs a universal script. Li Chen murmured. He wanted to develop a new type of writing based on the Goblin language, which all other tribe members would have to learn. However, creating a script was too difficult, at least it was beyond what he could accomplish at the moment, so he had to set it aside for now. He began to think about another exposed issue. There were too few management talents in the tribe. With his departure, the entire burden of the tribe fell on E'er. Fortunately, the dear executive vice leader was good at math, otherwise, the tribe would be in chaos. However, he couldn't just push E'er to the limit. After only a few days away, he returned to find E'er had lost a lot of weight. If he kept managing the tribe for a few more days, he might just collapse. As for cultivating management talents, Li Chen had a quick idea for achieving results. You can find goblins among the meritorious ones who have the potential to evolve into big goblins, teach them mathematics, and transition them from the army to lead hunting teams or farming teams. Those who perform well can even be promoted to the position of deputy chief. This approach not only cultivates management talent but also provides a place for those who have contributed, a win-win situation. As for whether the goblins can handle management positions, Li Chen believes they can. The intelligence of big goblins is no different from that of humans, and after the baptism of military law and war, big goblins tend to become more rational. While they cannot create characters now, they can use existing numbers. Arabic numerals are simple and easy to understand, and perhaps they can even teach some basic arithmetic. Knowing mathematics, simple management should not be a problem. As he thought about this, Li Chen's consciousness grew heavier, and before falling asleep, he chuckled to himself, damn it, teaching goblins mathematics, he must be the only one in all the realms doing this. 2 days later, on a small hillside in the northwest of the goblin tribe, 5 spear-wielding goblins stood in a neat formation, dressed in soft armor made from horned crocodile, holding their polished long spears, standing like sculptures. Behind them was the goblin hunting team, arranged in groups of 30, also standing in formation, and further back were the bewildered goblin pups, dog-headed people, humans, and ogres. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the top of the hill, where over 100 graves had been dug, with wooden coffins at the edges containing the bodies of fallen goblin soldiers. The goblins were confused. They did not understand why the chief wanted to bring back the bodies of their comrades and go through the trouble of making wooden boxes for burial. They may not understand, but since the chief ordered it, they would follow through. Compared to the various races and monsters who had no idea what Li Chen was planning, humans were clearly aware of the situation. Wasn't this just burying fallen soldiers? They had seen such scenes back in their homeland. Usually, a high priest of the god of light would preside over such events, citizens would offer flowers, and soldiers would be buried with great honor. But here were goblins. Could monsters also pay tribute to the fallen? Though there were 1,000 questions in their hearts, humans still pretended to be solemn, standing in the back and not daring to speak. Li Chen stood before everyone, dressed neatly and with a solemn expression. He surveyed the crowd and shouted loudly, warriors, you are currently in a state of ignorance, your thoughts are chaotic, and you do not understand what a nation is, what a people is. You are confused about everything I do. But it doesn't matter. As time progresses, culture develops, and knowledge accumulates, you will awaken to the consciousness of nation and people. You will understand why we stand here today, spending a great deal of time to bury these fallen warriors. At that time, you will return, come back here, and pay your respects to the brave who have died. After speaking, he looked at everyone, allowing them to digest his words. The goblin formation stirred slightly, their brows furrowed and expressions uneasy, feeling something stirring in their minds, a certain emotion beginning to take root. As chaotic beings, goblins instinctively resisted this emotion, but it was futile. In the future, Li Chen would guide them through various social activities, allowing these emotions to occupy their savage brains, leading the entire goblin race into a civilized society. As Li Chen issued the burial order, the goblins picked up tools to bury the coffins, working for nearly an hour, and over 100 mounds appeared on the hillside. Li Chen placed a wooden sign in front of the gravesite, and on the sign, the following words were carved in a common human language: 70 goblin warriors and 3 human warriors are buried here. They died in a conflict during the era of the ignorant tribal wars, making outstanding contributions to local safety and the future prosperity of the tribe. Year 4352 of the Age of the Gods, October 1st. Li Chen took out a white rose and placed it in front of the wooden sign, bowing his head, closing his eyes, and remaining silent. The big goblins also entered a mode of mourning, although their minds were filled with chaotic thoughts. At least their actions were in place. At the back of the group, Knight Leo and Miss Hannah stood together. After listening to Miss Hannah's translation, Knight Leo was filled with admiration. Now I understand why that old man Mond is so determined to return to the human world. Just look at this one here. He is doing everything he can to nationalize the wild goblin tribes, and I believe he will succeed. Within 10 years, Miss Hannah nodded in agreement as this special goblin repeatedly refreshed her worldview. Suddenly, Miss Hannah remembered something. Previously, Li Chen had asked her to carve certain words in the common human language on a wooden plaque, which included the names of the 3 soldiers who had died. She asked Knight Leo, what do you think about the fact that your 3 soldiers' names are also inscribed on the tombstone? Knight Leo crossed his arms and silently watched Li Chen, who was bowing his head in mourning. After a long time without a response, Miss Hannah decided not to press further. Knight Leo felt very conflicted. It was comforting to see the soldiers recognized after their deaths, but the recognition came from goblins. Was this an honor or a disgrace? He truly couldn't understand this strange goblin warlord. After the morning, Li Chen began to confer ranks, mainly appointing a company commander, 30 squad leaders, and 100 deputy leaders. Since this was a collective operation, the military achievements were shared among everyone, but how to allocate them to individuals was a matter of discussion. Li Chen chose to let the company commanders select the bravest warriors themselves, allowing them to receive their ranks first, while others would have their achievements recorded for future rewards. To avoid anyone feeling it was unfair, he provided substantial material rewards for those who did not receive ranks, giving each person 50 pieces of jerky and in addition, allowing them to find wood rats for 3 days of indulgence. Li Chen announced that they could use the jerky to approach the kobolds. He had asked the dog shaman about this, and the dog shaman said that as long as there was enough meat, the kobolds would be willing to help the goblins breed. They weren't human, and their moral views weren't that complicated. This relieved Li Chen. The weak moral concepts of the monsters could actually aid in the integration of races. After the ranks were conferred, the goblins became excited. Those who received ranks felt superior, strutting around with their chests puffed out, while those who did not still felt good with their material rewards. Li Chen ordered a 3-day celebration, after which they would begin major construction. The goblins rushed off to find female kobolds with the jerky they had received. Li Chen glanced at the mounds of graves scattered across the mountain and turned to leave. He intentionally combined the funeral and the rewards, hoping to cultivate a sense of honor among the goblins. Goblins are creatures with weak emotional ties, making it incredibly difficult to instill a sense of honor, but an army without honor has no future. Li Chen hoped the goblins would connect the fallen soldiers with the rewards, creating the illusion that death equated to reward. Future funerals would become increasingly extravagant and splendid, making the goblins feel that dying was worth it. After 3 days of revelry, nearly all the female creatures in the tribe were pregnant, and the tribe was about to experience a population explosion. The spear-wielding goblins had no time to savor the 3 days of madness and were immediately dispatched by Li Chen to hunt in the forest. With the tribe's population exceeding 1,500, and with the next wave of goblin offspring on the way, the number of mouths to feed would surpass 2,000. This many hungry mouths put pressure on Li Chen. He had to send out numerous hunting teams to catch prey and transform the fishing tribe into an agricultural tribe before the hunting resources in the forest were depleted. The era of major construction had begun. Trees were being felled, and stumps were being dug out of the ground. The ogres, wielding pickaxes resembling deep-sea titans, stood in a row, driving their pickaxes deep into the ground and pulling forward, excavating half a meter of soil. Behind him followed goblins and dog-headed men carrying hoes, meticulously tilling the land and planting wheat, potatoes, or vegetables. The primeval forest was dying, and the cultivated land spread like a virus. The rough yellow earth road was built alongside the fields, and to allow farmers to live on the land, Li Chen constructed a village for 100 people at intervals. In the future, such villages would stretch throughout the empire from north to south. In addition to the agricultural development, the scale of the blacksmith shop was also expanded, with Tyok erecting the second water wheel, the second large bellows, and the second blast furnace. The blacksmith shop upgraded to a steel workshop, and Tyok had 50 skilled goblin blacksmiths who could forge all the knives, swords, and farming tools themselves, along with 100 goblin blacksmith apprentices who could produce some simple rough blanks. Almost every 10 people in the tribe could have access to a blacksmith, making iron products very abundant in the tribe. After more than a month of construction, the once dirty and chaotic goblin tribe was now filled with wooden houses, and the original primeval forest had been largely cleared for farmland, with the usable population of the tribe reaching 2,000. Feeding so many people was a huge burden, but fortunately, Li Chen's earlier decision to release those dog-headed men had paid off. The leaders of the various tribes of dog-headed men came to kneel before Li Chen, expressing their submission and begging for the right to hunt. Li Chen generously allowed them to keep their current hunting grounds and required them to pay a tribute of 30% of their catch. The leaders of the tribes all knelt in gratitude for his mercy. From then on, every day, dog-headed men brought meat into the goblin tribe to pay taxes, which helped the tribe's food supply return to a safe level. The large population provided Li Chen with a significant labor force, allowing him to undertake several projects simultaneously. He built a simple school, where goblins with official positions were required to attend classes. The curriculum was very basic, recognizing 10 Arabic numerals and performing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, just that simple, and nothing more in-depth. Now, the goblin tribe had no written language, but that didn't matter. As long as the goblins mastered mathematics, the tribe's management system would step into a new era. As for the teacher, it was, of course, a one-eared goblin, a self-taught math whiz. Li Chen verbally taught him a set of lesson plans and instructed him to educate the goblins at the school, using a reward system of hit with a stick and then give a sweet date for motivation. Goblins who couldn't learn would be beaten severely, while those who did would be rewarded with meat or sent to gather cassava. It seemed that the graduation rate at the school was quite high, with at least 90% of the students graduating. Additionally, Li Chen wanted to build a wall to enclose the core residential area of the tribe. After all, it was still the cold weapon era, and the defense of a wall was quite necessary. Li Chen also wanted to construct the wall to have the tribe recognized as a town by the system. This way, he could hide system soldiers in the town and manage the territory through the system interface, which would be much more convenient. However, Li Chen felt that if he was going to do it, he should do it well. Wooden walls were too shabby, and he wanted to go straight for stone walls. To build stone walls, he needed to quarry stones, which were easy to find in the mountains, but the adhesive was harder to come by. Fortunately, a lime kiln had been built at Goblin Fort, allowing for the construction of walls with lime. Li Chen immediately arranged the tribe's work and took his troops to Goblin Fort. 3 days later, Li Chen climbed mountains and crossed rivers to reach Goblin Fort, which had not changed much since he left, only the population had increased and there was a bit more cultivated land. Li Chen shook his head. Without his guidance, the goblins' initiative was still too lacking. The Goblin tribe was on the verge of becoming a small town under his leadership, but Goblin Fort remained the same, which left him somewhat disappointed. Li Chen entered the castle, where Goblin Da welcomed him. "Boss." Li Chen responded with a grunt. "Report on the situation at Goblin Fort." Goblin Da scratched his head awkwardly, unsure of how to express it. After hesitating for a while, Gobu spoke up. "The population of Gobu Fortress is that large." He gestured with his hands to indicate a size. "The new land we've cultivated is so vast, the grains harvested by humans fill the warehouses to the brim, plus the meat from hunting and fishing, we have so much jerky." Li Chen felt overwhelmed and quickly told him to be quiet. "Gather your subordinates, I'll have someone count." His system soldiers had received a math education and could read numbers. After a busy half-day, Gobu returned to report. "Boss, there are currently 1,400 adult goblins in Gobu Fortress, of which 200 are big goblins. The food and jerky in the warehouse should be enough for 1,000 people for 2 months, and the land can support 500-person villages for farming." Li Chen nodded. With such a food surplus, he could accomplish something significant. He opened the system management page, clicked on town, and then on warehouse. The accumulated supplies in the warehouse during this time included axes times 53, hose times 53, grains times 889, meat times 264, fish times 105, and lime times 1050 bags. There are only this many iron tools. It seems the iron ore brought by humans has been exhausted. In reality, the blacksmith only forged 53 iron tools, so the system only has 53. However, there are over 1,000 bags of lime, nearly 2,000 bags when combined with what we have in reality. After counting his possessions, Li Chen immediately ordered Gobu, "Gobu, I want you to take half the population and build a hardened road from Gobu Fortress to the tribe." Gobu nodded but still raised a question. "Boss, what is a hardened road?" Li Chen took him to the lime kiln, collected some lime, then went to the riverbank to gather sand and gravel, mixing them in proportion with water, and used it to level the ground. "I want you to use this material to build a road wide enough for 10 big goblins to walk side by side. Don't worry, I'll be here for a long time to teach you. You can ask me if you have any questions." Li Chen was also worried that the goblins would mess up his road. He wanted a smooth, straight path to the tribe, not a bumpy one. For many days afterward, Li Chen stayed in Gobu Fortress, training the goblins to use cement for road construction. Li Chen had never mixed lime or built roads before, but he had seen others do it and figured it out through trial and error. During this process, he made many tools, such as a large stone roller for compacting the ground, wooden tools for lake mud, mixing tools, and rudimentary measuring tools that could help level the road. Clumsily, the goblins began to construct the hardened road. To speed up the construction, Li Chen made a trip back to the tribe, transporting over 1,000 bags of cement through the writing warehouse to the tribe, then formed a construction team on site to start work on both ends. Once this road was completed, the Goblin tribe's iron tools could be delivered to Gobu Fortress, and the lime from Gobu Fortress could be sent to the tribe. A month later, both construction teams had become skilled, so Li Chen handed over the road construction to Gobu, allowing him to oversee it while he continued to plan for the tribe's future. That night, Li Chen lay on his bed, feeling relaxed, while the dog shaman stood by the bed, holding a staff, looking uneasy. "Boss, do we really have to do this? The fear spell is really painful, don't you feel uncomfortable?" The dog shaman couldn't understand why such a good boss had become addicted to the fear spell. This thing could scare others for a lifetime with just one try. Yet the boss repeatedly requested to experience the fear spell. Did the boss have some peculiar preference? Li Chen shot him a fierce glare. "What do you know? I suspect the fear spell has the ability to foresee the future. I want to guard against bad things happening in the future, so hurry up and cast it for me. Otherwise, I'll slap you." The dog shaman let out a reluctant whine and began to perform the ritual. The purple-black energy condensed on the staff, and the dog-like which thrust the staff forward, sending the purple-black energy into Li Chen's body. Li Chen made no resistance, relaxing his body and mind to accept this energy. The purple-black mist enveloped his eyes, and he once again saw the illusion that terrified him the most. However, this time it was not the distant future of a fallen nation. The environment had changed. This time he saw vast farmlands, water wheels, and villages, but the surroundings were clearly less advanced than last time, resembling a not-so-distant future. Especially when he saw several scenes showing that the hardened road he had overseen the construction of was not yet completed. He confirmed that the future he was seeing should be within a year. In the illusion, Li Chen saw a village of about 100 people near Goblin Fortress, where goblins were returning from the fields with hoes on their shoulders, lying down on the beds in wooden houses to rest, waiting for the village's communal meal. They thought they would spend a peaceful day like this, but suddenly, a massive fireball crashed into the village, exploding and destroying a wooden house. Then more fireballs rained down. like cannonballs into the village, igniting it in an instant. A large number of goblins were burned to death, and those who survived rushed out of their homes, their faces filled with confusion, completely unaware of what was happening. While the surviving goblins were in a daze, suddenly, a volley of sharp arrows shot in from outside the village, accurately exploding the goblins' heads. Four strangely dressed individuals charged into the tribe, beginning to slash and kill indiscriminately. These individuals were either clad in full plate armor, wielding shields the size of doors, capable of smashing goblins with a single charge, or wearing wizard hats, holding staffs, and able to hurl fireballs after a brief incantation. Alternatively, there were those in leather armor, holding longbows with long pointed ears and beautiful features, elven archers. Each of their strikes was deadly and precise, and in less than 5 minutes they had wiped out the goblin village. Among these four, the most striking was a brown-haired young man in half armor, wielding a magnificent longsword, always wearing a warm smile like the sun. This man was not tall, appearing to be around 1.60 m, and looked quite young, resembling a 17 or 18-year-old boy. The intricate patterns on his one-handed sword were quite complex, and the guard was shaped like a goddess with outstretched arms. With a casual swing of his sword, he effortlessly sliced a beam as thick as a person's waist in half. After the four had killed all the goblins in the village, the apparent leader, the sunny young man, pointed his sword towards Goblin Fortress in the distance, and the four charged towards it. In less than half an hour, Goblin Fortress was engulfed in flames. Next, the four followed the hardened road, slaughtering along the way, and every village of 100 people was annihilated. In less than a day, this strange human squad had reached the goblin tribe. Li Chen led a fully staffed squad of 5 goblins to charge, but the 4 invaders were incredibly strong, quickly causing the spear-wielding goblins to collapse in disarray. Ultimately, Li Chen led 40 system soldiers to confront them, engaging in a fierce battle, severely injuring the shield-wielding man and lightly wounding the elven archer, but Li Chen was shot in half by the sunny young man. In the moment before losing consciousness, Li Chen saw the wizard embracing the sunny young man, using a powerful lightning spell on his hand, saying something with a face full of admiration. Li Chen often communicated with Miss Hannah in the common tongue of humans, and he recognized the words of the lightning wizard. Wow, the hero has become even stronger. Gah! I'm gonna smash you, hero. I'll blow you to bits. Li Chen was so frightened that he jumped up from the bed, throwing straight punches, hooks, and sweeping kicks into the air, acting like a madman, which made the dog-like witch whimper and retreat to a corner, hugging its head and trembling. Li Chen vented his panic for a while before stopping, gasping for breath. This time the illusion was different. It seemed to show scenes from within a year, where a 4-person hero squad ventured deep into the monster forest, completely wiping out the monster regime he had just established with just the 4 of them. The terrifying strength of the 4 people made Li Chen's heart race to 180. He couldn't forget how his troops melted away like snowflakes when they charged in, and in the end, he brought in the fearless system soldiers, only to replace the burly man with heavy injuries, and then he was cut in half by the hero's sword. A fierce sense of unwillingness surged in his heart. He would never allow such a thing to happen. Li Chen pushed open the door, took a deep breath, his chest swelling like a bellows. Within 3 meters, he roared, his voice almost turning into a tangible sound wave that spread throughout the goblin tribe. After waiting for a while, the disheveled and haggard Miss Hannah, with dark circles under her eyes, quickly ran in front of Li Chen. What is it? Miss Hannah gritted her teeth, wondering what madness this goblin was up to again. Now she was just like his secretary, always on call, unable to sleep well in the middle of the night, feeling like she was about to have a hormonal imbalance and break out in acne. Li Chen ignored Miss Hannah's sulky face and hurriedly asked, "Have you seen 4 people in the human kingdom? One is a muscular man with a door-sized shield, another is a super thunderfire chicken mage, a proud elf archer girl with a flat chest, and a short-haired sunny warm guy. Aren't they the hero team blessed by the goddess of life? How do you know them?" Before Li Chen could finish his description, Miss Hannah blurted out, "The short-haired sunny warm guy you mentioned is called Leon, the 375th blessed of the goddess of life, the earthly representative of the divine, also known as the hero. His Highness Leon, a respectful title, is not only powerful but also adheres to the virtues of knighthood, a gentleman renowned across the 4 human kingdoms. His companions are all outstanding individuals. I once saw His Highness Leon from a distance in the royal capital. He is really handsome." Miss Hannah covered her face with her hands, swooning, with little hearts popping up above her head. But Li Chen's expression grew darker. It seemed that what he saw in the illusion was real, otherwise there wouldn't be such an accurate reflection in reality. If everything he saw in the illusion was true, then his forces being destroyed by the hero team and himself being slain by a sword could also happen. Li Chen gripped the great sword in his hand, pushed past the lovesick Miss Hannah, and stepped outside, taking a horse stance in front of a beam. Miss Hannah was pushed aside by Li Chen and muttered in dissatisfaction, "What are you doing? Are you going to tear down the house?" Li Chen took a deep breath, slowly raised the great sword, and when the power he had accumulated reached its peak, he shouted and swung the sword fiercely, cutting the beam that one person could embrace in half. Without the wooden beam for support, the ceramic tiles on the roof began to fall with a crash, and Miss Hannah hurriedly ran out of the wooden house, stomping her feet in anger. What are you doing? Ouch. Li Chen sheathed his sword and glanced at Miss Hannah. Miss Hannah, stop swooning. By His Highness Leon you mentioned already has a Thunderfire chicken female mage by his side. Not only does she have thunder, but she can also continuously cast fireball spells, and she doesn't stink. You have no chance anymore. Miss Hannah instantly fell into a low mood, mumbling something about how thunder was a developmental deformity, that continuous fireball spells had no technical content, and all sorts of incomprehensible complaints about how everyone stank. Li Chen ignored her and locked himself in the wooden house. In the illusion, he saw the hero Leon could cut through the beam with a single sword. He could do that too, but he had to take a horse stance, accumulate power, and carefully aim to swing the sword to barely achieve such an effect. But that guy could do it with a casual swing. How terrifying must that power be? Plus, the 3 companions of the hero were also very strong, and they had wiped out his forces with just 4 people. What should he do? Damn it, do I have to abandon this place and run away? The hero blessed by the divine was too strong. He wasn't confident he could deal with them, and the tribe didn't have such supermodel level combat power. But he really didn't want to give up on relocating and starting over. And who knows if the hero squad has any tracking methods, or if they are just coming for him. After all, the social structure of goblins is the same all over the world. Knowledge and power are held by the leader. The hero squad must be planning to kill the leader before they give up. What to do? What to do? What should I do? Li Chen was in a state of anxiety, pacing back and forth in the room. Eventually, feeling too exhausted, he lay down on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. In fact, with his current physique, he could go 2 or 3 days without sleep without any issue, but after experiencing a fierce spell, his nerves were extremely weakened, which led him to fall into a passive sleep. After falling asleep, Li Chen had a dream. In the dream, he recalled a video he often watched on Bilibili in his previous life titled Encyclopedia of Transcenders, where a particular phrase was revered by many transcenders as a Bible. Marksmanship is also a way, ballistics is also a path, 1 part saltpeter, 2 parts sulfur, 3 parts charcoal, add a bit of sugar and Big Ivan. To the west of the monster forest lies the human world. It is said that in ancient times, when the gods could still walk the earth, the world continent was neatly divided into several independent pieces, with each god owning a piece of land, creating various creatures in their own image. Later, for reasons unknown, the gods could no longer set foot in the world, and the races they created began to develop in a barbaric manner. As time passed, geographical changes caused the continental plates to shift and merge, leading to the races beginning to border each other and erupt into wars. Among them, the human race, one of the major races, withstood the invasions from foreign races and engaged in civil wars, splitting and reuniting until now, forming a situation where 4 human nations jointly govern the southwestern continent. Among them, the kingdom of Sarsos has a long border with the monster forest. Due to the abundant magical elements in the monster forest, it breeds powerful magical beasts, which occasionally invade the human kingdom, causing significant casualties. To fend off the beast invasions, the kingdom has built many castles and walls along the border, which posed considerable difficulties for the fleeing steward, Mond. At this moment, Mond looked like a beggar, with tattered clothes, wounds all over his body, and he appeared to have aged 30 years. However, he had finally arrived back in the human world. He found a secret passage known only to the nobility, crossed the border, and reached the core territory of the kingdom of Sarsos. With the belief of exposing Li Chen to the public, he spent several months heading west, carefully hiding himself. Now he was a rebel and had to be cautious, only by finding acquaintances in the royal capital and using their mouths to relay the goblin situation to the upper echelons of the kingdom could he attract attention. He managed to reach the royal capital by begging, and then found himself at the door of an acquaintance, a noble from the capital. But before he could even see anyone, he was captured by the guards of his acquaintance's house and was swiftly judged, ready to be burned at the stake. Steward Mond was tied to a cross in the city square of the royal capital, with easily flammable firewood piled beneath him. A green-robed official shouted loudly to the passing citizens, "Citizens of the royal capital, look at this pathetic stray dog, participating in a shameful rebellion. He should have been sentenced to death, but His Majesty the King is merciful, allowing him a way out, exiling him to the monster forest. Yet he dared to defy the law and sneak back into the kingdom. This despicable fellow can only be purified by fire, both body and soul. Burn him." The official's shouting made the passing citizens stop in their tracks, pointing and whispering about the steward Mond on the stake. "Who is this person?" someone asked. "Come on, are you from the countryside? This guy is the steward of the Kosovo family, the one that supported the prince's rebellion to seize power." "Ha? Why would the prince rebel? Isn't he the only heir to the throne in our country? The throne will eventually be his. Why would he rebel? Come on, you really don't know? His Majesty the King worships the goddess of life and has received her favor. He is 110 years old this year, and the prince is almost 80. Do you understand now? Oh, I see." A murmur spread among the crowd, unsure of who had first picked up a stone to start smashing the steward of Mond, and everyone immediately followed suit. They were uninterested in the power struggles of the kingdom's elite, but they wanted to see blood flow like a river. The steward of Mond was subjected to a barrage of blows and insults, his heart filled with extreme sorrow and rage. He shouted desperately to the crowd about the threat of the goblins, but no one believed his words. In a fit of anger and despair, he struggled fiercely, but his body was tightly bound to the stake. He roared in anguish, "You ignorant fools, you have no idea of his power. That guy. He brought order to the chaotic goblins. That guy is establishing systems, regulating goblin behavior, reclaiming land, building infrastructure, and training a professional army. With the goblins' breeding rate, in less than 3 years, they could become a great calamity for the Empire, and you will all be enslaved by goblins. We must act quickly. Kill that guy quickly, hurry up." His voice was extremely ragged, like rusty knives scraping against each other, painful to the ears. The citizens in the square had gathered nearly 10,000, momentarily stunned by his shouting. The square fell into a brief silence followed by uproarious laughter. Goblins, even in the human world, could occasionally be seen in some more primitive forests. At such times, a farmer with a pitchfork could easily wipe out a goblin nest, though they were annoyingly hard to kill completely. A creature that farmers could easily slay could become a great threat to the kingdom? Ridiculous. An official standing by the stake shook his head with a laugh and ordered the soldiers beside him, "Execute." The soldiers raised their torches, ready to throw them onto the pile of wood, but a clear and vibrant male voice rang out in the square, reaching everyone's ears. Wait! This voice seemed to possess some kind of magic, causing everyone to stop their actions, including the soldiers who were about to ignite the fire. The crowd automatically parted to make way, and 4 individuals, as if adorned with a dazzling effect, walked forward, their faces proclaiming, "I am the protagonist." Upon seeing these 4, the official immediately donned a flattering smile. "Respected Prince Leon, may I ask what instructions you have?" Indeed, the newcomers were the hero team that Li Chen had seen in his hallucination. The warm-hearted Leon stepped forward, gazing directly at the frenzied steward of Mond, while the official explained, "Prince Leon, this man is a traitor to the kingdom, having returned to the capital from exile without permission, and he has violated the laws of the kingdom. We are executing him by burning." The official feared that Prince Leon would intervene in their execution. Heroes generally did not meddle in the kingdom's mundane affairs, but who could say for sure with such powerful heroes? Leon, the hero, understood the official's unspoken words and explained, "My lord, I am only interested in the special goblin mentioned by the prisoner. May I ask a few questions?" The official sighed in relief, stepping aside to indicate that he could ask whatever he wanted. Leon approached the steward of Mond, looking into his eyes, and gently inquired, "Sir, you said that this special goblin would become a great calamity for the kingdom. What makes him so special? Is he exceptionally powerful, perhaps blessed by an evil god?" The steward of Mond met the hero's clear gaze, his mind slowly regaining clarity. "No, he is not particularly powerful, but he has brought order to the goblins, which is far more terrifying than individual strength. Do you understand what I mean?" The steward feared that the only person willing to listen to him might not have the education to grasp his meaning, and that would mean his death was in vain. But fortunately, the hero was evidently smart enough to understand the steward's point. "I see, as long as farmers receive adequate training in military discipline, they can fight alongside knights, and the same goes for goblins. If a rational leader truly emerges and manages the race with order, then the goblins could indeed become a great calamity for the kingdom." Leon spoke with a serious expression, and Butler Mond let out a sigh of relief. Finally, someone was taking it seriously. However, an official nearby couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha ha ha, Your Highness Leon, don't listen to this madman's nonsense. Goblins are just a bunch of dwarfs. 10 soldiers can wipe out 100 goblins. What threat could they possibly pose? This madman just can't stand the wildness of the magical forest and is looking for an excuse to run back to the kingdom." Upon hearing this, Butler Mond was enraged again, spitting a mouthful of saliva onto the official's face. "You arrogant, foolish Jurassic. You must have inherited your dead father's position to be in your current role. The kingdom is declining because of idiots like you." The official, having saliva spat on his face and then being scolded, was furious. He snatched the torch from a soldier's hand and threw it into the pile of firewood, which instantly engulfed Butler Mond in flames, causing him to let out a piercing scream. The brave Leon wanted to save him, but the burly shield-bearer behind him held his shoulder. "Don't move. Regardless of the circumstances, he is a rebel, and we cannot interfere with the execution of secular law." A strange light flashed in Leon's eyes, and his hand, which was reaching out to save him, slowly lowered. Butler Mond's screams grew fainter, and before he was completely burned to death, he kept praying, begging to kill that goblin. The fire completely consumed Butler Mond, and Leon's expression was grave. He pondered for a long time before suddenly waving his red cloak and saying to his 3 companions, "Get ready, we are heading to the monster forest immediately." Li Chen, who was on the brave's mind, was actively preparing for battle. He paused the labor-intensive work of hardening the road and began to expand his army. The troop size was directly increased to 1,000 men, 10 companies. With so many professional soldiers, they could dominate a region in the monster forest, but this did not give Li Chen even a shred of security. The brave team was too strong. Killing goblins was like playing a game of meat pigeons. It was like chopping vegetables. To deal with the brave team, he still needed to improve the quality of his troops. Li Chen wanted to upgrade this system. Soldiers in his hands to level 4, so he led them to hunt monsters everywhere. However, the experience required for a level 3 soldier to reach level 4 was too much. After several days of grinding, only the first goblin spear he had recruited had accumulated enough levels to become a senior goblin warrior. The progress was too slow, and the returns were not high. Li Chen thought of an idea. Why not upgrade all his non-system soldiers, the spear-wielding goblins, into big goblins? As long as he recruited spear-wielding goblins into the army and took them out to hunt for 2 or 3 days, they could level up into big goblins. After upgrading, he would kick them out of the army and recruit new spear-wielding goblins. Repeating this process, wouldn't 1,000 spear-wielding goblins become 1,000 big goblins? With this thought, Li Chen began recruiting spear-wielding goblins to hunt monsters. Whenever a spear-wielding goblin leveled up into a big goblin, he would kick it out of the army list with a kick and then recruit ordinary spear-wielding goblins. After several consecutive days, the tribe produced over 200 big goblins. Of course, this was still not enough. The ultimate plan to deal with the brave was still gunpowder. While leading the troops to hunt wild monsters, he was also exploring the surrounding resources to see if he could find sulfur and saltpeter. In his previous life, he had read the Encyclopedia of Transcendence several times, which explained very clearly how to purify raw materials and manufacture black powder. 1 saltpeter, 2 sulfur, 3 charcoal was just a catchphrase. The Encyclopedia of Transcendence detailed more precise ratios. With so many hands under him, he could conduct multiple experiments. As long as he could find sulfur and saltpeter, he was 100% confident he could produce black powder. Hard work pays off. During one of the wild hunts, Li Chen led his team to chase a pack of over 30 magic wolves and discovered a volcano, where he found a large amount of sulfur. Li Chen was overjoyed and immediately relocated 200 goblins from the goblin tribe to this place, establishing a gathering point and then mining sulfur. Now that sulfur is available and charcoal can be produced on its own, all that's left is saltpeter. This stuff can be scraped off the walls of the toilet, where some white crystals form. That's saltpeter. However, scraping it this way yields very little, and the production of black powder simply cannot keep up. Li Chen thought about contacting the heroes. He needed at least several hundred kilograms of black powder, or he would have no foundation at all. Scraping that little bit of saltpeter from the toilet, he would be grateful to make a kilogram of black powder, but that wouldn't be enough. To mass-produce black powder, he still needed to find nitrate. Nitrate appears loose, pale yellow, and has a bitter taste when licked. Before the development of advanced chemical industries, the main method for humans to obtain nitrate was by mining nitrate soil. Li Chen immediately sent a mission to the hunting team, instructing them to look for nitrate soil. Whoever finds it first would be awarded the title of Super Invincible General, 100 strips of jerky, and unlimited access to wood rats. Thus, the goblins of the hunting team all hoisted their shovels and, like possessed individuals, began digging everywhere, tasting the soil. Some goblins even applied to Li Chen to bring enough food and ventured over 100 kilometers away from the tribe. They found many powerful monster gathering spots, suspected coal and copper mines, and other minerals, but no nitrate soil. This left Li Chen in despair. During this time, he had made many simple tools and had refined the saltpeter scraped from the toilet walls using plant ash, successfully producing half a kilogram of black powder, which he turned into an explosive. The test explosion was very successful. If wrapped with steel balls and iron pieces, it could easily kill enemies within a range of 10 to 20 meters. But the lethality of this thing was still too low. He didn't believe the hero team would be killed by such a small firecracker. He needed at least 10 to 20 kilograms of explosives, with continuous explosions, to have a chance of taking them down. So the question returned to the starting point: where could he find nitrate soil? Li Chen was so worried his head was spinning, he could only urge the hunting team to explore further areas. At the same time, he put the eastward migration plan on the agenda. If there was no other way, they would have to run, at least to save their lives. Fortunately, there was still hope. Li Chen could never have imagined that he would obtain a large amount of nitrate soil in such a bizarre way. One day, after returning from hunting, Li Chen rested in a goblin village of 100 at the edge of the forest. He kicked out the 30 upgraded big goblins from his team, telling them to report back to their original squad, and spent some dinars to recruit 30 spear-wielding goblins, planning to continue hunting. However, before he could set off, the wild monsters came looking for him. A group of dog-headed people ran out of the forest carrying meat on sticks. It was a supply team from the dog-headed tribe. But these dog-headed people were very strange. They looked panicked and ran very fast, as if something in the forest was chasing them. The leading dog-headed person saw Li Chen in the village, immediately dropped the meat, and rushed over to kneel in front of him, howling, "Ah, woof 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 woof." Li Chen scratched his chin. He didn't understand the dog-headed language, couldn't comprehend the barking, and could only send someone to find the dog shaman or Miss Hannah. However, before the two translators could arrive, several staggering figures emerged from the edge of the village forest. Everyone turned to look at those figures. with white, bony frames, deep eye sockets, and blue ghostly flames, swaying as they walked, looking like they would fall apart at any moment. Damn! Skeleton soldiers! Li Chen quickly drew the great sword from his back, and the system prompted that he had entered combat mode. The newcomers were classified as enemies. Li Chen raised an eyebrow and ordered the 30 spear-wielding goblins he had just recruited. Go! Deal with them! The spear-wielding goblins rushed forward, stabbing wildly at the skeleton soldiers. The spear, being a piercing weapon, didn't do much damage to the skeleton soldiers. Some spear tips passed through the ribs of the skeletons. But there were many spear-wielding goblins, and several long spears easily pinned the skeleton soldiers to the ground, while the skeletons flailed their bony limbs. The goblins looked at each other, puzzled about how to kill the skeletons. Li Chen noticed something resembling soulfire inside the skulls of the skeleton soldiers and commanded, "Smash their heads with stones." The spear-wielding goblins complied, finding large rocks to crush the skeletons' heads. After a series of crisp sounds, all the skeleton soldiers fell silent. A victory notification echoed in Li Chen's mind as he glanced at the loot: grains times 3, weathered bone powder times 3, high-density bone powder times 1. He scratched his head, wondering what use the bone powder had for him. Was it for fertilizing crops? Just as he was pondering, Miss Hannah and the dog which were called over. Miss Hannah gasped upon seeing the skeletons on the ground. "Oh my god, it's a necromancer's doing." She stepped forward and poked the bones with her staff, easily shattering them. She sighed in relief and patted her chest. Thank goodness, low-level undead, probably naturally generated." Li Chen asked, "Miss Hannah, is there anything noteworthy about these undead?" Well, undead specifically refer to creatures that come back to life after death due to magical erosion of their bodies, often appearing in skeletal form. Because hard bones can store more magic. In natural conditions, certain special terrains accumulate more magic, and if animals die there, they can generate undead. However, since the naturally accumulated magic is limited, these undead are quite weak. Li Chen found it quite fascinating. It sounded like grinding small monsters for leveling up. Miss Hannah continued, "There's also a type of undead that is artificially created, and those are extremely powerful. The magic injected into the bones is several times, even dozens of times, more than what occurs naturally. Evil necromancers love to do this. They quietly raise an army of undead, posing a huge threat to the kingdom, so they must be eliminated as soon as they are encountered." As Miss Hannah spoke passionately, suddenly, a rustling sound came from the forest, and more than a dozen skeleton soldiers emerged. "Ha! Why are there more?" Miss Hannah exclaimed in surprise. Li Chen waved his hand, and the spear-wielding goblins immediately charged forward, knocking the skeletons to the ground with their spear shafts and then smashing their heads with stones. Miss Hannah stepped forward to examine the skeletons, her face filled with confusion. "Something's not right. Why are there so many?" Normally, in natural conditions, the magic accumulation in the terrain is limited, and the number of undead generated shouldn't exceed single digits, but this is just too many. Li Chen looked at the dog-headed people who had brought the meat and said to Miss Hannah, "The skeleton soldiers must have followed them here. Ask them what happened." Miss Hannah hurriedly translated, and both sides barked for a while. Miss Hannah looked surprised. "They said they came to deliver meat and passed by the battlefield where the goblins fought last time. All the corpses left there turned into skeletons and chased after any living beings." Li Chen recalled the sight of his first battle with Longya, that strange black-gray tree. That place was peculiar. Within a mile of the black tree, not a blade of grass grew. And both the dog witch and Miss Hannah had mentioned that the tree exuded a very ominous aura. Could these skeleton soldiers be? He immediately ordered the several company leaders who had been with him, "Gather all troops, we're going to check out the black tree." The troops quickly prepared, and 1,000 spear-wielding goblins marched boldly toward the black tree. As the army emerged from the lush forest onto the barren land, they immediately spotted hundreds of aimless skeletons wandering near the black tree. Do-do-de-do-do-de. For some reason, the sound of an electric guitar suddenly echoed in Li Chen's ears. The skeletons in the distance spotted the living beings at the forest's edge and began to claw and rush toward them. Li Chen commanded, "Charge! Break their legs, but don't damage their skulls." He wanted to train his troops and didn't wish for non-system soldiers to participate in the kills. As long as the skull isn't damaged, skeleton soldiers won't die, so as long as the skeleton soldiers are incapacitated, the system soldiers can finish them off to gain experience. With nearly 400 skeleton soldiers charging in, it was quite intimidating, but Li Chen had 1,000 goblins, all armored and wielding iron weapons. The goblins rushed in, banging away. The skeletons' bones were brittle, and one by one, they crawled on the ground with broken legs and waists. Once all the skeleton soldiers lost their ability to move, Li Chen ordered 30 system soldiers to finish them off. He commanded that each could only smash the skulls of 10 skeletons, which would be enough to level up to a big goblin. The goblins, armed with axes, went in and quickly dispatched 10 skeletons with a flurry of blows. Seeing over 100 skeletons still on the ground, Li Chen thought about trying to feed all this experience to a level 4 soldier to see if he could upgrade them to level 5. He looked at the only 2 level 4 soldiers in his army, Goblin Spear and Goblin Bow, one a seasoned warrior and the other a seasoned archer. Who should he Upgrade? His gaze swept over the faces of the crowd, finally resting on Goblin Bao. This guy was an archer, had the highest DPS during leveling, and he was already a level 4 soldier, so he would gain the most experience. The experience needed to level up from 4 to 5 was certainly a lot, and the recently promoted Goblin Spear probably wouldn't be enough, but Goblin Bao might just be on the brink of leveling up. Li Chun ordered Goblin Bao, go ahead and kill these skeleton soldiers. Goblin Bao borrowed an axe from someone and went to smash the skeletons' heads one by one, the cracking sounds echoing around. After he smashed the last skeleton's head, Li Chen received the system's victory notification in his mind. He glanced at the loot: grain times 120, weathered bone powder times 71, high density bone powder times 42, magical bone powder times 3. After a quick look at the loot, Li Chen excitedly opened the soldier interface, scanning through a pile of upgrade options. All the goblins could level up to level 2. What thrilled him the most was that the only archer also lit up with an upgrade icon. Ah, finally! Damn it! Finally, I can upgrade! Tears almost welled up in Li Chen's eyes. After so many days, he finally had a level 5 soldier. Without hesitation, he clicked to upgrade, staring intently at Goblin Bao. Goblin Bao's pupils dilated as he felt a surge of power flooding into his body. His height increased slightly, his physique changed little, but his body density rose a notch. Li Chen opened the soldier management interface to check Goblin Bao's attributes: Goblin Sniper, Vitality 28, Control 30, Stamina 28. Cunning 20, Social 10, Intelligence 15, Proficiency in bows, crossbows, and running skills all at 350. Li Chen gasped, wow, 350 proficiency in bows and crossbows. In a hack-and-slash game, that would mean sniper level. And Goblin Bao's intelligence reached 15 points. No wonder his gaze had become so profound. Goblin Bao savored the changes in his body and suddenly knelt before Li Chen with a thud. Boss, we respect you so much. He knew where his changes came from and immediately pledged his loyalty to Li Chen. Damn it, why was his vision getting blurry? Was it tears? No, it was the boss's brilliance too. Dazzling. Goblin Bao instinctively lowered his head to wipe his eyes, but looking at the ground beneath his feet, he murmured, "Yellow soil?" He rubbed it with his fingers. It was very soft. He then took a bit of mud and licked it. It was bitter. Li Chen patted Goblin Bao's shoulder, activated his speech skill, and painted a bright future for everyone, gaining +1 in charm proficiency. Miss Hannah stepped forward, her expression serious, pointing at the large black-gray tree. "You must destroy it immediately. That thing is a netherworld tree." Li Chen was filled with question marks. What is a netherworld tree? Miss Hannah explained solemnly. Scholars believe that our world can be divided into 3 realms: the real world, which is the plane we currently inhabit, the divine realm, the abode of the gods, and the underworld, the place where the souls of the dead go. The 3 realms are separated by barriers, allowing only souls to communicate while matter cannot interact. However, these barriers also have cracks, and the underworld tree is a plant that grows from the fissures between the underworld and the real world. It releases a territorial aura into the surroundings, contaminating the soil of the real world and turning it into barren underworld land. If left unchecked, the underworld land will expand, and more powerful undead creatures will crawl out from it. Her expression was serious, clearly indicating that the underworld tree was a dangerous existence. Li Chen was ecstatic. The underworld tree would spawn undead. What was this? This was a monster spawn point. These days, he had been leading people around to grind levels, running until his legs felt like they would break, and the nearby prey was becoming increasingly scarce. The horned crocodiles by the river had even been upgraded to a level of protected species. He was worried about where to grind and improve the quality of his troops, and now a monster spawn point appeared? Li Chen was so happy he almost wanted to dance, but it was the first time he had seen Miss Hannah so serious, so he felt it was best to explain things properly. After all, she was one of the few talents under his command, and he should coax her a bit. Just as he was about to speak, the goblin archer, who had been kneeling in the dirt, tugged at his ham and held up a handful of loose yellow soil for him to see. "Boss, is this the saltpeter you wanted us to find?" Li Chen was taken aback. He had just been curious about what the goblin archer was studying on the ground. It turned out there was a discovery. He carefully observed the yellow soil in the goblin archer's hand, and it looked like saltpeter. It was loose in texture and had similar properties to saltpeter. He dipped his finger in it, licked it with his tongue, and tasted a bitter flavor. This was indeed saltpeter. He suddenly looked around at the land, centered around the underworld tree. There was loose yellow soil for a radius of 1 kilometer. Damn! A huge surge of excitement coursed through him like electricity, almost making him leap into the air. Miss Hannah saw Li Chen shaking there, drooling, and rolling his eyes, completely unresponsive to her warning. She reminded him with dissatisfaction, "Hey, are you even listening to me? The underworld tree must be destroyed. Otherwise, the underworld land will increase, and the leaking aura from the underworld will spawn even more powerful undead creatures. Let me use a series of fireballs to burn it down. I tell you, I can use a series of fireballs now too." Saying this, she proudly puffed out her chest. In fact, the series of fireball technique was quite difficult, but who told the goblins that? There was a powerful lightning-wielding female mage beside Prince Leon who could also use the series of fireballs? Her competitive spirit was ignited, and Miss Hannah stayed up late to practice diligently, eventually mastering the series of fireballs, though the power of the series was lower than that of a single fireball. Let me show you the fruits of my labor. Miss Hannah raised her staff, ready to chant a spell, but Li Chen's eyes bulged, jumping in front of her, pointing a big heavenly prison at her nose. You want to mess with the underworld tree? Stay away from my tree. The tree is just sitting there, quietly, not doing anything. Why should it suffer attacks from you despicable, foul-smelling monkeys? Is it just because the tree is black? Do you discriminate against black? Damn you, you wicked Hakina, how could your thoughts be so malicious? I can't help but ask. Miss Hannah was completely stunned. The iron fist from the 21st century of Blue Star almost knocked her into the ground. Li Chen initially confirmed that the soil around the underworld tree was saltpeter and immediately conducted more detailed tests. He had people light a bonfire to obtain extremely high-temperature redwood charcoal, then threw the saltpeter onto the redwood charcoal to burn. High-quality saltpeter would make a crackling sound when it came into contact with the high-temperature charcoal, indicating a high content of potassium nitrate. The test was very promising. Throwing a handful of saltpeter into the fire pit caused it to crackle continuously, showing that the potassium nitrate content was indeed very high. This also explains why nothing grows around the underworld tree. Nitrates can actually be used as fertilizer, and it's high-quality fertilizer, but the concentration of potassium nitrate in the nitrates is so high that it becomes toxic to plants. That's why nothing grows in this area. The excess fertilizer has burned the land. After the tests, Li Chen looked at the underworld tree with eyes full of affection. Perhaps to others, this tree was a manifestation of death, but to him, the tree was simply a natural industrial treasure bestowed upon him. He even thought about having a few children with the tree. Li Chen had already made plans. Once he dealt with the hero squad, he would spend a massive amount of manpower to build a wall around the underworld tree to protect it. Additionally, he needed to research how to increase the chances of the underworld tree spawning skeleton soldiers. This thing was a monster spawn point, and if used well, he wouldn't have to struggle to grind in the wild anymore. While thinking, Li Chen saw the skeletons on the ground and got an idea. He ordered the goblins throw the skeletons around the underworld tree. From now on, don't throw away the bones you get while hunting, gather them all here. The goblins obeyed the command and picked up the skeleton frames to throw them around the underworld tree. Although Li Chen didn't fully understand the underworld tree's skeleton spawning mechanism, skeleton soldiers must have skeletons, right? He believed that piling a large number of bones around the underworld tree would likely increase the chances of spawning skeleton soldiers. Once the goblins finished piling up the skeletons, Li Chen opened the writing and slashing system and scattered all the bone powder he had obtained from monster drops onto the skeleton pile. After doing all this, Li Chen relocated 200 goblins to this area to facilitate the mining of nitrates. Additionally, he had the ogre family encircle the underworld tree with large wooden stakes, creating a simple prison so that the skeleton soldiers that spawned would be trapped, waiting for Li Chen to come and farm them. With matters concerning the underworld tree temporarily settled, Li Chen led his team to mine several tons of nitrates and returned to the goblin tribe. He immediately began the preparation of black powder, starting with 3 small factories located far from the tribe, mainly for processing and purifying the 3 raw materials. Then he constructed a synthesis workshop for the final synthesis of black powder. Because this stuff was too dangerous and could easily explode with a small mistake, the black powder factory was built with the strongest concrete. At the same time, the amount of black powder that could be synthesized at each workstation could not exceed 500 grams, and thick concrete walls separated each workstation. This way, even if an explosion occurred, it would only kill the operator, reducing the chances of a chain reaction. The synthesis workers were chosen by Li Chen to be the big goblins. These guys, who had intelligence no different from normal people, were more reliable than ordinary goblins, but not by much. To improve the yield and to avoid seeing Patrick Star in another world, Li Chen conducted strict training for the workers, making sure they absolutely had to follow the production procedures, otherwise, they would be executed publicly. For this reason, he lived and ate in the powder factory for over a month, watching over the workers like a principal. He trained the workers to develop a sixth sense. Whenever Li Chen appeared behind them, they would sweat profusely, and the procedures were executed 100% according to the rules. After nearly a month of safety production training in the workshop, turning safety production into muscle memory and implanting it in the big goblins' minds, Li Chen finally felt a bit more at ease. The factory began to steadily output black powder, but Li Chen wanted to increase the potency of the black powder by granulating it. The Transcender Encyclopedia mentioned a method, adding starch. Li Chen had someone make a stone mill to dehusk the wheat dropped by monsters and grind it into flour, grinding it multiple times until it was as fine as possible. The flour was mixed with water to form a dough, similar to making dumpling skins, and then placed in water to knead the dough, continuously kneading until the water was filled with a milky liquid. The dough was set aside, and the milky liquid was allowed to settle for a day. The water was poured off, and the sediment was starch. The starch was naturally dried and it could be sifted or ground to remove large particles. Li Chen wanted both. He ground to remove large particles and sifted to obtain fine starch. Starch mixed with water turns into a paste, and while stirring, black powder is added until it becomes a dough. Using a mold, the dough is pressed into cakes to increase density, which are then air-dried, crushed, and sifted to obtain relatively uniform granulated black powder, enhancing its power while also providing some moisture resistance. After half a month of hard work, Li Chen finally secured a stable and large source of gunpowder, completely mastering a weapon of immense destructive power. How to utilize the power of black powder became a new area of research. The first option was definitely a bomb, the simplest and most direct method of destruction. To unleash the destructive power of black powder, it needs to be compacted so that it can explode in a confined space. For example, bundling it into a bomb is one way. However, the monster forest is a tropical rainforest with high humidity, making it easy for the bombs to become damp. If the hero arrives then, the bombs would be rendered useless, which would be quite amusing. Li Chen chose to use explosive barrels. He had Taiyou create a cylindrical iron mold similar to a mineral water bottle structure, which would serve as the main body of the explosive barrel, weighing 3 kilograms and capable of holding 10 kilograms of black powder. Once the explosive barrels were produced, Li Chen ordered the workers to paint a black coating on both the inside and outside of the barrels to eliminate static electricity and enhance safety. The black paint was derived from a type of tree Li Chen found while foraging. The bark was stripped, boiled, and filtered to obtain a substance similar to lacquer. However, the black liquid produced from this tree had a terrible smell, and the painted surface lacked luster. Put simply, it looked unattractive, and no one would genuinely use it for furniture. Fortunately, the appearance of the explosive barrel was not a concern. The black powder was packed tightly. A cotton wick soaked in potassium nitrate was inserted into the opening, and the top was sealed with concrete, followed by another layer of black paint for moisture resistance. A barrel resembling an oversized mineral water bottle was thus completed. Li Chen, accompanied by the system soldiers, ventured deep into the mountains and placed the explosive barrel among a cluster of large trees, igniting the cotton wick. A few minutes later, the wick reached the black powder, resulting in a thunderous explosion that reverberated through the forest, startling birds within a 3-mile radius. The goblins Li Chen brought along were terrified, screeching in panic, desperate to find a crevice to hide in. If they weren't system soldiers, they would have likely fled by now. Silence! Li Chen shouted, and the goblins finally quieted down. He approached to inspect the blast site. A strong smell of gunpowder lingered in the air, and there was a half-meter deep pit in the ground. The nearest tree had been blown apart, and trees within a 10-meter radius were affected. If this were used against goblins, the lethal range would be at least 20 meters, but against a hero, that was uncertain. Li Chen thought that to blow up a hero, the explosion would need to be right in their face, with a lethal range likely within 5 meters, mainly because the hero performed too strongly in illusions. If it were too far, they might just end up with a face full of dust. Li Chen sighed in relief. Regardless, he now had the means to confront the hero. However, a new problem arose: how to deliver the explosive barrel within 5 meters of the hero. The first thing that came to Li Chen's mind for throwing the explosive barrel was a ballista. However, it lacked the power. The explosive barrel weighed 13 kilograms, and the ballista couldn't launch it. What about an advanced design catapult? The catapult had enough power, but it was too large. The hero's team would react quickly and would definitely dodge if they saw something flying toward them. Moreover, the catapult was too cumbersome and slow to react, so that wouldn't work. What if they had an ogre throw it? The ogre had immense strength, so throwing it wouldn't be a problem, but like the catapult, it lacked agility. Additionally, the ogre's fingers were too large to ignite the explosive barrel properly. Even if they had a goblin ignite it and then hand it to the ogre to throw, the length of the fuse would be an issue. If it was too long, the hero's team would run away. If it was too short, it would be worse. The clumsy ogre could end up blowing up the barrel in its hands, leading to a direct encounter with a bang. So, could they make it into a landmine? It's one thing to have a plan, but the real question is where the brave adventurers will come from. Without being able to predict the enemy's route, this strategy is useless. After much contemplation and finding no good solutions, Li Chen decided to temporarily abandon the idea and focus on developing other offensive methods for black powder. Speaking of other offensive methods for black powder, the most essential one is the musket. Smoothbore muskets have a low technical difficulty. As long as the production is standardized and the materials are solid, their power is still quite formidable. Coincidentally, the Encyclopedia of Traversers mentioned musket manufacturing, and Li Chen, being someone extremely interested in firearms, could practically recite the production process of smoothbore muskets. Just the thought of commanding a group of musketeers, unleashing unparalleled firepower to crush other forces of this era, made him a bit dreamy. Unable to wait any longer, Li Chen rushed into the steel factory to find Taiyou and explained what he wanted to create. The two sides discussed for nearly 3 days, drawing numerous blueprints while communicating and refining the manufacturing tools. The tools were quite simple, so there's no need to elaborate. Overall, producing smoothbore muskets was very easy, and with the current production conditions, it could be done. Li Chen had seen pictures of smoothbore muskets before. Their barrels were not round but hexagonal, which is typical for forged barrels. Producing smoothbore muskets is easy, but quality control is the challenge. Handcrafted smoothbore muskets have inconsistent calibers, and the ammunition cannot be standardized. If the bullets are too large, they won't fit, and if they are too small, the gas seal won't work, causing the projectiles to fail to absorb all the kinetic energy, resulting in reduced power. Therefore, Li Chen had to put in a lot of effort into quality control. Fortunately, coming from the future tomato star, he had many tricks up his sleeve for quality control. For instance, determining how much steel is needed to forge a barrel in advance, cutting it just right. Another example is after determining the musket caliber, manufacturing a cylindrical iron pipe, heating the steel until red hot, and wrapping it around this iron pipe. The resulting musket caliber would match that of the iron pipe. Additionally, many traversers use a method where each worker is responsible for manufacturing a single part, improving their proficiency with that specific component and increasing the yield of finished products. The theory was feasible, and the only thing left before scaling up production was finalizing the musket design. While others would need to spend a lot of time experimenting, Li Chen's era had already thoroughly explored muskets, so he could directly copy historical data. He set the musket caliber at 20 mm. After all, black powder isn't very powerful, and to increase lethality, the caliber must be larger. The barrel also needed to be long enough to allow the projectile to absorb sufficient kinetic energy, so he fixed it at 1,100 mm, adding a stock, making the total length of the musket 1,300 mm. With such a long gun plus a bayonet of 20 to 30 centimeters, it was practically a spear. With everything ready, it was time to forge. The sound of hammering echoed through the blacksmith shop thanks to the ogre providing the power hammer, shaping. The steel was simple. In less than half a day, a smoothbore matchlock gun that looked a bit rough but was made of solid materials was born. In the testing area, Li Chen used a measuring spoon to pour a scoop of gunpowder into the muzzle, compacted it with a ramrod, inserted the projectile, and compacted it again. He poured black powder into the ignition chamber, lit the match cord, secured the gun to a wooden gun rack, and aimed the muzzle at a large tree 50 meters away. The trigger of the musket was connected to a string, and from a safe distance, Li Chen pulled the trigger. The spark from the match cord ignited the ignition chamber, and with a bang, the gun fired, the recoil knocking over the wooden gun rack, and thick white smoke billowed out, leaving a new hole in the distant tree. It worked! Tai Oak shouted excitedly, running over to pick up the musket for a closer inspection. No barrel explosion, it really has the spell to fire iron balls. This is amazing. Tai Oak was thrilled. After studying with Li Chen for so many days, he initially didn't believe Li Chen's description of creating a weapon that even mortals could wield with powerful spells. But after the success, he gained a new understanding of the power that steel could unleash. Perhaps the blacksmith's mundane status would be elevated because of this weapon. Tai Oak was obsessively stroking the hexagonal gun barrel, yet he failed to notice that Li Chen, who had been silent all along, was looking at him with eyes full of murderous intent. Li Chen slowly drew the dagger from his waist. At that moment, thinking of the fleeing butler Mond, he strongly suspected that this crisis involving the hero was instigated by Mond. Those not of my kind must have different hearts. With such an advanced weapon as a firearm, Tai Oak, who participated in its entire manufacturing process, must have learned how to use it. If this person had treacherous intentions and returned to the human world, then Li Chen's eyes narrowed into a slit. The dagger was about to be fully drawn, and the killing intent bursting from his pupils made him resemble a venomous snake poised to strike. The poor Tai Oak remained oblivious, still exploring the firearm, continuously expressing his admiration. Rest assured, my lord, with the ogres here and the 150 goblin workers in the factory, producing 50 to 60 guns a day is no problem. He kept his head down, his eyes only on the firearm, as if he couldn't see the world around him. Li Chen's motion to draw the dagger came to a halt. If he wished to rule the world, to build a comprehensive multiracial empire, how could he lack even this little tolerance for others? Today he might kill Tai Oak for possibly leaking the firearm secrets. Tomorrow would he kill Miss Hannah for developing some special magic array, and the day after would he kill him for the new dark arts researched by the dog witch? It could only be said that strengthening management, providing talents with what they truly desire, and retaining talents is the key to long-term development. The dagger was sheathed, and Li Chen approached with a smile, patting Tai Oak on the shoulder. Tai Oak, the upcoming mass production work will be entrusted to you. Remember, quality control is key. Do not cut corners, and ensure that standard projectiles can fit into every gun. Work hard, and life will get sweeter. Yes, my lord. No problem, my lord. Tai Oak hurriedly assured him, and Li Chen secretly decided to assign a squad of goblins to watch over Tai Oak. If he tried to escape, he would kill him, and then he left to attend to other matters. Tai Oak watched Li Chen walk away, his body going limp as he collapsed to the ground. Just now, he truly thought he was going to die. Li Chen's solidified killing intent pierced like a thorn, making him feel that life and death were merely a thought away from Li Chen. I must be more valuable, Tai Oak murmured, getting up from the ground, disregarding the fatigue from days of sleepless research, and ran to the steel factory to forge madly. After a night's rest, Li Chen found Tai Ok again. The firearm had taken shape, but the faithful companion of the firearm, the bayonet, was still uncertain. However, this small bayonet posed a challenge for Tai Ok. Li Chen wanted to create a bayonet 30 centimeters long that could fit onto the gun barrel. He drew a sketch resembling the socket bayonets popular in the 18th century. Tai Ok looked at the blueprint, shaking his head. Like a rattle drum. No, it's too long and too thin. Forcing it to be made would easily break it, and the circular socket at the end of the bayonet is also very difficult to process. He took a sword to show Li Chen. My lord, look, this sword can be made this long because the blade is wide enough, giving it sufficient strength. The bayonet you need is too thin. The sword had a blade length of about 70 centimeters, weighed 2.5 kilograms, and the widest part of the blade was approximately 5 centimeters. At a glance, Li Chen understood the sword could be made long because the blade was thick enough, but the bayonet was just a thin iron rod, making it impossible to achieve such slenderness with current smelting technology. Li Chen sighed and no longer insisted. He recalled a news story he had seen before, where a certain major country could not produce qualified bayonets and had to resort to using the single-function triangular military bayonet. The triangular shape provides stability, and the structure of the triangular bayonet is certainly stronger than that of a flat iron blade bayonet, but it is functionally limited, unable to perform slashing or slicing actions, nor can it serve as a tool knife. It was a choice made out of necessity. Li Chen said helplessly, since a long bayonet can't be made, let's go for a short one. If the socket is hard to process, we can make it thicker. The materials were inadequate, so they improvised the structure, at least allowing the musketeers to have close combat capabilities. Once alchemical technology improved in the future, they could switch to longer and better bayonets. The two began a long discussion, sketching and writing on the blueprints, and eventually, a bayonet with a blade length of about 15 centimeters featuring a thick and clumsy collar at the end was born. The bayonet was forged by iron ore, and after quenching, it was fitted onto the musket. The 1.3-meter musket had a 15-centimeter bayonet attached, making the overall length 1.4 meters, which was not quite adequate for close combat functionality. Li Chen turned the musket over and over, smacking his lips, thinking it was better than nothing, strong enough to solve the issue of having or not having one. Li Chen ordered iron ore to produce them as quickly as possible. The steel mill began to work day and night, with the blast furnace continuously pouring molten iron, while 5 adult ogres hammered the gun barrels like human meat-powered hammers. Duang duang duang. On the first day, due to inexperience and insufficient worker coordination, only 4 muskets were produced, and 2 were deemed substandard by Li Chen. On the second day, 8 muskets were completed, with 3 classified as substandard. As their skills improved, Li Chen rewarded the workers with material incentives, a meal of monster meat and wood rat. This greatly boosted the workers' morale, and on the third day, the musket output surged to 15, with only 1 being substandard. For a long time afterward, the workers became increasingly skilled, and the speed of musket production accelerated until it stabilized at around 20 per day. This output was already substantial, but Li Chen felt it was still insufficient. To equip a 1,000-man army would take at least 2 months. He couldn't wait that long. Who knew when the hero squad would arrive? He thought of the Goblin fortress certified by the system, or a blacksmith shop could produce a knife, and a knife would appear in the writing and hacking warehouse, allowing for double production capacity wherever they moved to make guns. Li Chen quickly relocated the blacksmith factory to the Goblin fortress, leaving only 50 Goblin blacksmiths in the tribe to smelt iron. 5 days later, the workers and a large amount of raw materials arrived at the Goblin fortress and began production at lightning speed. When iron ore informed Li Chen that the first musket had been completed, he excitedly opened the management page of the writing and hacking town and indeed saw a musket on the warehouse page. Name: sturdy matchlock smoothbore. Gun weight: 4.5 kilograms. Weapon type: crossbow. Damage: 300 piercing. Ammunition flight speed: 230 meters per second. Effective range: 150 to 250 meters. Evaluation: a matchlock smoothbore gun made with very solid materials. The 1.1-meter long barrel provides considerable accuracy and lethality, commonly used for shooting within 100 meters, with remarkable effectiveness at close range. The bayonet is relatively short, and its close combat stabbing capability is debatable. Li Chen was overjoyed. With double production capacity, he could fill the 1,000 muskets in a month. He considered building a gunpowder factory in the Goblin fortress to also gain a double buff for gunpowder production. However, considering that building a factory required a large workforce and the threat of the hero squad was imminent, Li Chen abandoned this idea. A few days later, as the number of muskets and gunpowder increased, live ammunition training for the troops was put on the agenda. In a bare field, a scarecrow stood, and in front of it lined up a row of Goblin musketeers, all aiming their muskets at the scarecrow. Li Chen raised his sword and waved it forward. "Raise your guns! Fire!" The line of Goblin musketeers fired. In unison, white mist billowing from the gun muzzles, obscuring whether they hit the target scarecrow. Li Chen ordered again, "Fix bayonets." The Goblin musketeers drew their short bayonets from their waists and fitted them onto their muskets. "Charge! Kill!" Li Chen shouted, and the goblin musketeers yelled as they charged forward, thrusting their bayonets at the scarecrow ahead. New weapons required new training. To unleash the power of the muskets, the troops' discipline and obedience were demanded at a higher level. Especially for volley firing, the training process was fraught with difficulties. The musket goblins, unfamiliar with firearms, often fired their guns inexplicably ahead of time, causing the other goblins in the ranks to do the same. If this happened on the battlefield, premature firing could lead to the loss of the best strike opportunity, and the likely consequence would be defeat. To instill discipline in the musket goblins, Li Chen broke 10 military sticks, yes, 10 sticks for each of the 10 squad leaders, before they finally managed to practice a semblance of coordinated fire. After 3 more rounds of volley fire, Li Chen glanced at the darkening sky and ordered the goblins, "Everyone, return to the camp. Clean your guns. Squad leaders, conduct inspections. Those who don't clean their guns properly will forfeit dinner." Dismissed. The goblins marched back to the barracks in unison, while Gobu walked over to Li Chen. "Boss, I've noticed a problem. A company has 100 people, and when lined up, the farthest soldier is over 200 meters away. The orders from the squad leaders can't be heard by the soldiers at the back. When commands to advance, retreat, or fix bayonets are given, the farthest soldiers are always a beat behind, especially after firing several rounds. The ringing in their ears makes it even harder for them to understand the commands." Li Chen nodded repeatedly, his gaze towards Gobu filled with admiration. Truly, with an intelligence of 15, he was smarter than the other goblins, able to identify and raise issues. "Very good, Gobu, you're doing great. Keep up your observations and your thinking. I've already considered the problem you raised. I had Taio create a military whistle system. I developed a set of command signals for the whistles. When the time comes, I'll distribute whistles to all the squad leaders and we'll focus training on the whistle commands." Gobu looked at him with admiration, realizing that his boss thought further ahead than he did. The two began to chat casually about how to train the musket soldiers to maximize their combat effectiveness, and as they talked, Gobu brought up another matter. "Boss, don't you think the training intensity has been too high lately? I feel the soldiers are struggling, they seem restless, and I worry that if this continues, something might go wrong." Li Chen paused for a moment, then shook his head. "A powerful enemy is coming. We must strengthen ourselves in every second we have. If the soldiers are training hard, then we'll increase their rations. Once we get through this wave of hardship, we can ease up on the training intensity." Not knowing when the hero squad would arrive, Li Chen always felt a sword hanging over his head, and this pressure translated into the grueling training of the musket goblins. The musket goblins needed to train for 12 hours a day. They were either firing their guns or preparing to fire. When the guns got hot, they stood at attention, ran, did push-ups, and when they cooled down, they continued firing. The training volume was so intense that even Rambo would be exhausted. The hero squad was too strong. Cutting down goblins was as easy as slicing vegetables. They were being rigorously trained now, not just to improve their skills but to enhance their chances of survival. Gobu had nothing more to say, considering the military discipline in place. He felt it unlikely that anything serious would happen, so he didn't dwell on it and returned to check the soldiers' gun cleaning results. However, it wasn't long before Li Chen tasted the bitter fruit of his impatience. One day at 6:30 a.m., before dawn, Li Chen stood at the barracks door, blowing a metal whistle. As the whistle sounded, the musket goblins instinctively jumped out of bed, quickly donned their gear, grabbed their well-oiled muskets, and rushed out of the barracks to line up in front of Li Chen. They quickly reported their numbers, and after that, the squad leader would shout that a certain company was ready. There were rewards and punishments for assembly. Those who assembled first would get a larger share of monster meat for breakfast, while the last to arrive would have to run an extra lap during morning exercises. Today, the first company to finish lining up was Gobu's, and he shouted that they were ready. Li Chen nodded at him, and Gobu beamed with pride, knowing he could eat a bit more for breakfast. The musket goblins kept rushing out of the barracks, some fast, some slow, with squad leaders continuously reporting their readiness. At this moment, in the 8th Company's barracks, the squad leader, a third-level goblin warrior, was roaring at the soldiers to get out of bed quickly. He roughly yanked the fur blanket off the sleeping soldier, pulling the groggy soldier from his dreams. "Get up, you lazy bunch. Do you want me to kick your butts with my horned crocodile leather shoes?" The goblins scrambled up in a panic, hastily putting on their clothes, but one bald goblin remained lying in bed, sound asleep. "Get your ass up." The squad leader of the 8th Company rushed over, yanked the blanket off the bald goblin, and slapped him a few times. To his surprise, the bald goblin, suddenly enraged, roared like a heavy sleeper disturbed, and punched the squad leader in the chest. "Get the hell off me. I'm dead tired. I just want to sleep, Ah. This roar stunned the other goblins in the 8th Company, their faces filled with pain. Goblins were inherently chaotic beings, yearning for freedom and disorder. Being bound by military law was already unbearable, and with the intense training and accumulated fatigue, they all felt like they wanted to die. The squad leader, struck by a punch, looked incredulous, then immediately furious, charging at the bald goblin and hammering him while cursing. "Do you want to die? Get up and train right now, or face military punishment." Li Chen's military law had developed to be relatively mild, divided into 3 levels. The lowest level involved breaking bones with a baton, the middle level meant execution, and the highest level was a 3-strike execution. Generally speaking, once the threat of military law was issued, no goblin dared to act out, but the bald goblin was truly driven mad by the training, and he actually screamed, "I'd rather die right now than be worn out to death." He charged at the 8th squad leader, attacking him. The 8th squad leader was a level 3 goblin warrior, significantly stronger than the average goblin, and in an instant he had the bald goblin pinned down, hitting him while cursing. "Rebellion. 3 strikes and you're dead. I'm going to request a 3-strike execution from the boss." This statement was like the last straw that broke the camel's back, causing the other goblins to snap. They looked at each other, confirming the despair in each other's eyes, which quickly transformed into hatred and madness. As if they had agreed upon it, they suddenly howled and charged at the 8th squad leader, punching and kicking him. The squad leader hadn't even reacted before he was overwhelmed by dozens of hands and feet, knocked to the ground, unable to speak. The bald goblin struggled to crawl out from the crowd, glancing at them with a twisted, crazed expression. He ran to his bedside, grabbed his own firearm, and, using the technique he had practiced nearly 1,000 times, loaded the gun with powder and shot, igniting the fuse with a match faster than he had ever done in training. He pushed through the frenzied crowd to reveal the 8th squad leader, aimed the gun at his chest, and without a word, pulled the trigger. At this point, everyone understood the tone of this book. It was not a novel focused on goblins raiding various otherworldly beautiful girls, but rather a story about developing a farming and military power in another world. In the later stages, the protagonist would train more armies, face more enemies attacking him, engage in larger-scale battles, and witness more high-tech changes in warfare. But war was not everything. The establishment of a nation by monsters, the social ecology of monsters, and the laws of monsters were the aspects I wanted to focus on. How monsters could build a lawful society, how various races could coexist harmoniously, and the modernization of a monster nation, at least to the level of a World War I country, were things I hoped to write about. Additionally, let's discuss the power system of this world. It is a world of medium magic, where heroes can defeat armies of hundreds, but when the army numbers in the thousands or tens of thousands, even heroes can be worn down to death. The scenario of a single person destroying a nation is impossible. The power system is similar to that of Warcraft, where hero units are strong but can also be exhausted by small soldiers. This book still focuses on the warfare of legions. Finally, let's talk about the achievements of this book. It's not great, with daily earnings around 20 meters, but I personally quite like this genre. So I plan to continue writing. If you want to support me, please leave more comments. I read through them one by one whenever I have time. Super humble. Also, a reader asked me to draw a map. I've been thinking about this other world for a while now, and the world map is already in my head. I'll find time to sketch a rough version. Oh, and in the last chapter, the protagonist wanted to kill Tayo using hidden firearms technology. Some said the protagonist lacked magnanimity, but I actually feel that this part shows the protagonist's great magnanimity, allowing Tayo to continue living. It seems to have had a bit of a counterproductive effect. I personally think this part had some depth to the protagonist. What do you all think? Let me know so I can optimize the plot. A gunshot shattered the tranquility of the early morning, causing everyone's hearts to leap into their throats. Although military law prevented the gun-wielding goblins in the formation from whispering to each other, their eyes darted around, eager to find out what had happened. As soon as the gun fired, Li Chen's expression darkened, and a red system prompt appeared in the upper right corner of his view. The gun-wielding goblin had killed a goblin warrior. What the hell? A mutiny. All troops, listen up. Surround Barracks 8. Li Chen immediately ordered, and the gun-wielding goblins quickly dispersed, forming a tight circle around Barracks 8. After a moment of madness, the soldiers of the 8th Company, seeing their captain dead on the ground, snapped back to reality, their minds filled with a single thought: we're doomed. Outside the gate, the barracks were already surrounded, former comrades aiming their firearms at them, and everyone's heart sank to the bottom. The thrill of the earlier explosion was now matched by deep regret. As they were at a loss for what to do, Li Chen's voice came from outside. 8th Company soldiers, listen up. Lay down all weapons. Exit the barracks and assemble in formation. There was a commotion inside the barracks, with soldiers hurling insults and accusations at each other, but no one took the initiative to step outside. Li Chen immediately gave the order. Light the fuses. Raise your guns. Aim. Upon hearing this command, the soldiers of the 8th Company knew that they were about to be shot, and they hurriedly rushed out of the barracks without their firearms, assembling in formation as usual. Li Chen signaled to the Goblin Spear, who led his soldiers to charge in, using their firearms to control the 8th Company soldiers. Li Chen entered the barracks to inspect, and at a glance he saw a corpse on the ground, with a fist-sized hole in its chest, an effect only achievable by shooting with a firearm. Li Chen squatted down and squeezed the corpse's bones. They were soft and broken in multiple places, indicating that the victim had been beaten before being shot. This was a sudden mutiny, a consequence of the military's ideological training lagging far behind its drills. Li Chen's expression darkened as he walked out of the barracks and stood before the formation, staring at the 8th Company soldiers. Their hearts raced. Here it comes, the death stare from the boss. We're doomed. Li Chen wanted to directly order the execution of the 8th Company soldiers. Regardless of the reason, killing an officer meant only death awaited them. But suddenly, he remembered the pile of 13-kilogram explosive barrels stored in the warehouse. He hadn't figured out how to deliver them within 5 meters of the hero yet, but it seemed he had found a solution: Goblin bombs. Goblin soldiers are fast, agile, and can seek out enemies on their own. If several charged together, surely some would reach close enough to the hero's team to explode, right? As for the fear of death, there was no need to worry. He could recruit them as system soldiers and use the battlefield command system to force them to charge. Li Chen's murderous intent slightly receded. Since there was a use for them, they couldn't all be executed. However, since they dared to kill an officer, they still needed to be punished, otherwise, it would be disastrous if other companies followed suit. He shouted loudly, 8th Company, all squad leaders and deputy leaders, step forward. The 10 squad leaders and 10 deputy squad leaders of the 8th Company all stepped forward and lined up in front of the formation. Li Chen then gave the order. 8th Company, 1, 2, 3, report. As soon as the goblins of the 8th Company heard they had to report, they trembled in fear. What did this mean? A 1 in 3 execution. The thing they feared the most had come. The counting of 1, 2, 3 slowly began, filled with dread, as all the goblins prayed that their number wouldn't be called. After the counting was complete, Li Chen shouted, those who called out 2, step forward. With a whoosh, 1/3 of the goblins collapsed to the ground. They were the ones who had called out 2, and they knew their fate was sealed. They had become the targets of the 1 in 3 execution. Li Chen waved his hand, and the musket-wielding goblins from other companies rushed forward to drag out those who had called out 2. Li Chen had all the officers of the 8th Company and the execution targets escorted to the shooting range, where they were tied to the scarecrows used for target practice. Li Chen pointed his sword at the bound individuals. Soldiers, these people are traitors. These despicable beings have killed their commander, and that is wrong. Incorrect. Unacceptable. It is time for them to pay the price. 1st Company, form firing line. The soldiers of the 1st Company, also known as the Goblin Spear Unit, quickly ran to form a line. Raise your guns. 100 soldiers raised their muskets, aiming at the warriors of the 8th Company. Fire. Bang 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 bang. A series of gunshots rang out, white mist enveloping the area as 100 rounds of 20mm projectiles shot into the bodies of the 40 execution targets within 20 meters, blowing them apart into a bloody mess, leaving them no chance to scream in pain, instantly killing them. The soldiers of the 1st Company were in shock. They had trained for so long but had never shot living beings with muskets. Now, seeing the incredible destructive power of these weapons, they were astounded. After the 1st Company finished shooting, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Companies followed suit, continuing the execution. Li Chen wanted every soldier to participate in the punishment of the traitorous soldiers, making them understand the consequences of betrayal. Once the execution was over, nearly 1,000 rounds of large-caliber projectiles had left the shooting range pockmarked, and there was no need to collect the bodies. They were all shattered, and the remains could be used as fertilizer. The soldiers rebuilt the shooting targets, preparing for today's training, while Li Chen watched the busy soldiers, lost in thought. This betrayal served as a wake-up call for him. An army without a soul truly cannot stand. There's an old saying that goblins are emotionally detached creatures. They lack a sense of honor, a spirit of contribution, and even foresight. Li Chen had informed the army about the threat from the hero squad, but even knowing such a threat existed, the soldiers still rebelled, due to the difficulties in training. An army without a soul and a sense of honor cannot go far. Even with the terror of military law to restrain them, the soldiers cannot unleash their initiative, and the army's potential will remain limited. Honor. How to cultivate a sense of honor in emotionally detached goblins. This was too difficult. Li Chen felt like he was going to crack. It seemed that the predecessors who had crossed over didn't have any guiding principles. There were few who had crossed over as goblins, and those who did were usually invincible and went off to conquer beautiful girls from various races, never discussing how to cultivate a goblin army. Li Chen scratched his head in frustration, and as he thought, he considered a compromise. Since it was temporarily impossible to cultivate a sense of honor in the goblins, why not first cultivate their sense of humiliation? There's a saying, knowing shame leads to courage. Perhaps for the goblins, this approach would yield surprising results? Li Chen immediately gathered the troops, found a deputy coffin, and had the commander of the 8th Company collected. He instructed the soldiers of the 8th Company to carry the commander they had killed up to Martyr Mountain, the mountain specifically for burying fallen goblins. He had the goblins from other companies stand in line, watching as the soldiers of the 8th Company dug a grave with their bare hands to bury the commander they had killed. Once they finished the burial, they were required by Li Chen to kneel before the grave and repent. He took the banner of the 8th Company, waved it high in the air, drawing everyone's attention to it. The company flag was very simple, even rough, a rectangular piece made of burlap with the numbers 1, 2, and 3 painted in black, representing the various company numbers. Li Chen shouted, "This is a shameful betrayal. The soldiers of the 8th Company cruelly killed their company commander. They have thrown honor aside. Since the soldiers of the 8th Company have abandoned their commander, the 8th Company has no reason to exist. I hereby announce the disbandment of the 8th Company. From now on, there will be no 8th Company, and the soldiers of the 8th Company are to be deemed traitors. With that, he picked up a torch and burned the 8th Company flag to ashes. The goblins watched in silence as the military flag was consumed by flames. Li Chen scanned their faces and noticed some goblins looking serious, their brows deeply furrowed, lost in thought, which brought him a sense of joy. Even if just 1% of them were moved by the disbandment, that would be excellent. Ideas are contagious. As long as they are guided properly, other soldiers will also feel fear and shame regarding the disbandment. Once the sense of shame is firmly established in the army, a sense of honor will not be far behind. With a sense of honor, the army will gradually develop a military spirit. Training continued, maintaining a very high intensity, unaffected by the recent betrayal. Li Chen would never allow the situation of the goblins to improve due to a grassroots rebellion. Any signs of insubordination must be violently suppressed. If the goblins become accustomed to expressing their demands to superiors through violence, it would lead to catastrophic consequences in the future. However, the problem was evident, and Li Chen still needed to make changes. The training intensity could not be lowered, so improvements had to be made elsewhere. First, Li Chen appointed a vice company commander under the position of company commander, also assigning a system soldier to take on the role. The vice company commander, besides assisting the company commander in commanding the troops during wartime, also had the task of listening to the soldiers' demands during peacetime. This mutiny made Li Chen realize that goblins also had a desire to express themselves, but the military management system he designed was very crude. The only language from superiors to subordinates was military orders and the military baton, leaving no channel for subordinates to communicate with superiors. He needed to establish a channel for subordinates to express their voices to superiors. Li Chen gathered the vice company commanders together and conducted 3 days of lessons, spreading some talking points. These included concepts of military honor, military shame, and the theory of brave threats. The vice company commanders themselves did not fully understand the significance of these talking points, but that was not important. Li Chen wanted them to mechanically recite these ideas to the soldiers, imprinting them in the goblins' minds like a thought brand. It didn't matter if the soldiers didn't understand. What was important was that they knew such concepts existed. He also wanted the vice company commanders to actively listen to the soldiers' demands. It was a bit challenging for goblin officers to engage in heart-to-heart talks with goblin soldiers. These guys only had thoughts of sha-sha and chow-chow, and asking them to care about their kin was simply absurd. But it didn't matter. Li Chen directly provided behavioral guidance to the company commanders. If a soldier approached the vice company commander for a heart-to-heart talk, the vice company commander was to empty his mind, put on a listening facade, and once the soldier finished speaking, pat him on the shoulder, take him out for a good meal, and let it go. There was no way to provide more detailed guidance. The public's awareness was still undeveloped, so a rough framework had to be established first. Whether it had any effect was irrelevant. What Li Chen needed to do was to build up brick by brick. Cultivating the goblins' sense of shame was one brick, cultivating their sense of honor was another, and continuously laying these bricks would eventually lead to the construction of a nation. With improvements in personnel matters, Li Chen also increased the material rewards for the soldiers. He developed a thick soup made from the blood and entrails of magical creatures, stewed with vegetables. This thing is to goblins what braised pork with vermicelli is to humans. Li Chen began incorporating this goblin specialty dish into their dinners to boost the training enthusiasm of the goblins. He also found a few humans skilled in brewing, having them make alcohol from wheat and potatoes, which was then provided for free on the soldiers' rest days to alleviate the mental fatigue of the musket goblins. These measures greatly stabilized the morale of the musket goblins. If they were all Li Chen's system soldiers, he could see their morale rise from a yellow state of around 40 to a stable green state of 70. With internal issues resolved, training continued to be prioritized. Day after day, the musket goblins trained, their use and coordination of the muskets becoming increasingly proficient. Sometimes, under the command of the military whistle, the musket goblins would fire a neat row of muskets, and Li Chen would have a vision, seeing elite lobster soldiers before him. The disgraced soldiers of the 8th Company were not idle either. These men, who were supposed to be executed, were assigned special training by Li Chen. Running, sprinting, over and over again, firing muskets, physical training, and standing at attention were all cancelled. Instead, the disgraced soldiers tied iron barrels to their chests every day and just ran. To protect their knees, they only trained for 2 hours a day, with the rest of the time dedicated to rest and relaxation. Li Chen even arranged for someone to massage the lower leg muscles of these disgraced soldiers, helping them quickly release lactic acid to ensure they could continue training the next day. The disgraced soldiers were thrilled. Going from 12 hours of training a day to just 2 hours, was this heaven? They laughed all day, running past the training ground, seeing the musket goblins standing dumbly at attention, their faces full of pride, thinking those guys must be envious of them. However, the disgraced soldiers had no idea what the iron cans they wore on their chests were 4, nor did they notice the musket goblins looking at them with the eyes of the dead. Days passed, and Li Chen led the troops on several long-distance runs from Goblin Fortress, all the way to the Goblin tribe, and then back again. This trained the officers in coordinating troop movements and also allowed them to eliminate the newly spawned skeleton soldiers by the tree of the underworld, upgrading the goblins to big goblins. Now, all 900 goblins in his 9 companies had become big goblins, forming a considerable armed force. This made Li Chen feel both proud and worried. After months of high-intensity training, the goblins had come to realize the status of the musket as an equalizer, and Li Chen feared that one day these little rascals might suddenly say, "I think I can take down the boss with one shot," and then turn their guns on him. This scared Li Chen so much that he sought out Iron Orc to make a set of bulletproof armor and helmet overnight. Iron Orc said the muskets were too powerful, and to withstand bullets, the armor thickness would need to be increased, but doing so would make the armor very heavy. Li Chen understood this. The materials he designed for the muskets were very solid, capable of penetrating the plate armor of humans in this era with a single shot. Fortunately, quality could be compensated for with quantity. Li Chen felt that with his current physique, wearing armor weighing 40 to 50 kilograms was no problem at all, while a full set of armor would weigh around 25 kilograms with a thickness of 1 to 2 millimeters. So, with 50 kilograms of material, if he only protected his chest and head, a helmet and chest-back armor set could be made with a thickness of about 10 millimeters. This should be sufficient to defend against musket fire, right? Iron Orc first made a 10mm thick iron plate and then conducted test shots with the musket, ultimately concluding that it could withstand musket projectiles from 70 meters away, barely meeting Li Chen's requirements. Li Chen had Iron Orc measure his body and hurried the crafting of the plate armor and helmet. In addition to increasing his own defense, he also wanted to design a weapon for the officers, allowing them to kill any traitorous soldiers at any time. The incident with the 8th company leader was a knot in Li Chen's heart. If the goblins ever decided to rebel and suddenly turned their guns on him, hundreds of muskets firing together would be something even a deity couldn't withstand. Li Chen contemplated a hand cannon with a length of 60 centimeters and a caliber of 40 millimeters, designed to fire a large number of small steel balls. When soldiers were lined up, this device could easily knock down 4 or 5 soldiers at once. With both the company commander and deputy commander firing together, they could instantly kill 10 soldiers with intentions of rebellion, definitely able to intimidate the remaining troops. This hand cannon would also significantly enhance the close-range output capability of the troops. Li Chen shared his ideas with Taiyou, instructing him to develop and produce a short-barreled hand cannon. After arranging for the production of the new weapon, night fell. Li Chen had only been sleeping once every 3 days, and with nothing to do in the dark of night, he picked up a hammer to forge iron. Over the past few days, he had visited the blacksmith shop multiple times, crafting many of the firearms tools himself, which had raised his forging proficiency to 52, unlocking the second option in forging skills. The 2 skills were 1. Steel processing, 2. Attribute bestowal. The first skill allowed him to forge steel, making it easier for him to acquire steel, but the blacksmith shop could already mass-produce it, so it was hardly in short supply. The second skill was impressive, allowing him to add attributes to forged items, equivalent to enchanting. Without hesitation, Li Chen chose option 2. He couldn't wait to test the effects and immediately began forging. He wanted to create a great sword for himself. He had previously given his sword to Knight Leo, and with his enhanced physical condition, he could wield a heavier sword. He aimed to forge a 2-handed great sword weighing between 10 to 12 kilograms. He placed the heated material on the anvil and tossed a potato to Dang Dang. Dang Dang treated the potato like a sunflower seed and swung the large hammer. With the humanoid forging hammer, the steel blank quickly took shape. Li Chen performed quenching and sharpening, and a sword measuring 1.6 meters in length and quite thick appeared in his hands. Name: exaggerated weight. 2-handed sword weight 11.5 kilograms. Swing speed 75. Swing damage 130. Stab speed 71. Stab damage 63. Length 1.6 m. Attributes: sharpness plus 10. Description: if this is a sword, it's rather too large. Upon seeing the special attributes, Li Chen immediately ran outside, found a beam that one person could embrace, took a horse stance, and swung the sword fiercely, directly cutting the beam in half. This time, the force he used to sever the beam was much less than before. With this divine weapon, the gap in strength between him and the hero had narrowed a notch. Li Chen twirled the sword joyfully, like a child who had just received a toy. Regarding bestowing attributes on forged items, he had even more profound uses in mind. If he were to create a lathe in the future and wanted to make a lathe cutter head, the strength of ordinary steel would not meet the requirements. However, if the lathe cutter head he forged himself had attribute enhancements, would it qualify? Excitement surged. The writing and slashing cheat had great potential. Perhaps his faction could soon enter the Steam Age? But that was a matter to discuss after resolving the hero crisis. He prepared the steel blank to start forging other weapons before the morning whistle for military training. He had plenty of time, and anyway, he wouldn't feel tired even if he stayed awake for 3 days and nights. Li Chen heated a piece of steel, placed it on the iron mat, and once again took out a potato to throw to Dang Dang. Once Dang Dang was charged up, each 100 swings of the hammer consumed only 1 potato. The sound of clanging echoed through the blacksmith shop, and after a while, Li Chen completed the weapon he desired. It was a special gun barrel 2 meters long, with thickened walls, and the single barrel weighed a whopping 20 kilograms. Li Chen wanted to see if he could pile on materials, sacrificing mobility to create a smoothbore sniper rifle version. The chamber of this gun barrel was very large, capable of holding 3 times the amount of propellant of a conventional firearm, and to prevent bursting, the chamber was extremely thick. After finishing the gun barrel, he didn't need to personally produce the other parts, he could directly take them from other workers for modification and assembly. Before long, Li Chen assembled various parts together, resulting in a super long firearm measuring 2.3 meters, and it even had enhanced attributes. Name: heavy flintlock gun with reinforced barrel weight, 24 kilograms. Weapon type: crossbow. Damage: 725 piercing. Ammunition flight speed: 570 meters per second. Effective range: 300-600 meters. Attributes: precision plus 10 evaluation. This is a cannon. This is a cannon. This is a cannon. Woohoo! Precision plus 10. Li Chen was thrilled to see the accuracy attribute appear, his heart racing wildly. He had intended to create a sniper rifle with such a long barrel, but to his surprise, it also had an accuracy attribute. This was simply explosive luck. At that moment, it was time for the morning military training, and Li Chen ran to the barracks door with the gun, blowing his whistle. All the soldiers rushed out of the barracks and lined up. Li Chen loudly ordered, "All company leaders, lead your troops in orderly training. Go Bu Bao, step forward and come with me." Go Bu Bao eagerly left the ranks, following behind Li Chen, his small eyes fixed on the large gun on Li Chen's shoulder, his face flushed with excitement as if he had found his true love. Upon reaching the shooting range, Li Chen handed the large gun to Go Bu Bao, pointing at a scarecrow target 300 meters away. "Can you see that target? Take a shot and see if you can hit it." Go Bu Bao rubbed his hands together in excitement, took the gun, and lay down to aim at the distance. The gun was too long and heavy, so it had a bipod at the front, allowing Go Bu Bao to aim more easily while lying down. After aiming for a while, the scarecrow target looked about the size of a grain of rice from 300 meters away, but he was a level 5 goblin sniper with a crossbow proficiency of 350, so seeing it clearly at 300 meters was no problem. He fired. The flint struck the powder chamber, the gunshot rang out, white smoke billowed, and Go Bu Bao let out a scream, clutching his shoulder in agony. Li Chen rushed over to help Go Bu Bao up, who exclaimed, "It hurts. It hurts too much. If I fire a few more shots, my bones will break." Li Chen realized this wouldn't work, the recoil was too strong for Go Bu Bao to train effectively. Later, you go find Tai Oak to make a piece of iron shoulder armor and attach it to the stock. That way, the recoil can be dispersed a bit. Go Bu Bao understood, and Li Chen looked at the target. With his eyesight, he could still see it clearly with focus. The writing and hacking system enhanced firepower overall. The scarecrow's right arm disappeared. "Ouch! You hit it with the first shot. You're good." Li Chen patted Go Bu Bao on the shoulder, causing him to grimace in pain. "No, boss, I was aiming for the scarecrow's chest. This gun's trajectory is off to the left." Li Chen's expression suddenly turned serious as he looked directly into Go Bu Bao's eyes. "Go Bu Bao, you are now one of the smartest goblins. I hope you understand that if we cannot overcome the hero crisis, we will all die, and we will lose everything we have now." He pointed at Gobu Fortress, then at the military camp, the land, and the water wheel by the river. Go Bu Bao's expression became solemn. "Boss, why do heroes want to exterminate us?" Go Bu Bao raised a question. Although he had heard Li Chen's speech to the deputy company commander about how heroes would burn their houses, destroy their crops, and kill them all, those propaganda speeches didn't explain why heroes would do such things. Li Chen turned his back, looking towards the west. "Go Bu Bao, there are many races in this world, but resources are limited. Each race must occupy more resources to survive, and killing the other side to prevent them from occupying resources is the most effective means." Go Bu Bao pondered this. "Boss, just like our war with the dragon teeth, it's essentially a struggle for resources." Li Chen nodded. The monster forest could only have one ruler, which indeed could be considered a resource struggle. "Go Bu Bao, our development has frightened the heroes. They believe that in the future, we will compete for many resources and become enemies of humanity. For the sake of humanity's interests, heroes will kill us without hesitation." He wouldn't care whether we were truly a threat, wouldn't care if it was adult goblins or goblin pups that were being killed, wouldn't care if we suffered in death. He would swing his sword casually, chopping you into pieces, and then, amidst the compliments of human females, he would laugh heartily with pride. I define this behavior as anti-intelligent bioticism, and the hero is an anti-intelligent biotic molecule, along with his companions, forming an anti-intelligent biotic group. Go Bu Gong grew increasingly furious as Li Chen spoke, finally letting out a sharp gasp, his eyes bloodshot. "Hero! Damn it! Kill him!" Li Chen's voice came softly. "But the hero is very strong. And his companions are strong too, terrifyingly so," Go Bu Gong shouted in anger. "We have firearms. We have 9 companies. We also have ogres." Li Chen shook his head. "The hero is very strong. Very, very strong. Even I, with the entire tribe, have no confidence in defeating him. Gobu Gong was confused. In his eyes, the boss was the most powerful being, incredibly smart, absolutely invincible, but how strong could a hero be if even the boss had no confidence in defeating him? Seeing that he had subdued Gobu Gong enough, Li Chen patted his shoulder and looked him in the eyes. Gobu Gong, defeating the hero is not impossible, but I need you to cooperate 100%. Gobu Gong was first bewildered, then his face filled with determination. Boss, what do you want me to do? Li Chen lifted the long firearm from the ground and slapped it against Gobu Gong's chest. Gobu Gong, I need you to quickly master long-range shooting. When the hero's team arrives, I will send someone to fight him, and what you need to do is stay away from the battlefield, find a suitable location, at the right moment, shoot a man with short brown hair. He is the hero. Remember, the hero is extremely, extremely strong. Until you are 100% sure, you must not fire a shot, even if all 9 companies perish. Even if I am killed by the hero, you must wait. Before you are sure you can shoot, do not light the fuse. Do not aim the gun at the hero, do not look directly at him, clear your mind, and it's best not to have any thoughts of killing him. He is very alert, and he might react the moment you think of killing him. Li Chen had seen many works from other worlds in his past life, and generally, heroes like this have a strong sixth sense. Just glancing at them could be noticed, let alone aiming a gun at them. He said all this to Gobu Gong to emphasize the importance of the situation, and now seeing his serious expression, Li Chen knew he had succeeded. In the kingdom of Sassos, there was a town called Baroya, bordering the monster forest. It was a large town with a population of 150,000, boasting 10,000 professional soldiers, and was the easternmost stronghold of Sassos. Due to the abundant wild goods produced in the monster forest, the bodies of magical beasts were precious magical materials, and the Adventurers Guild in Sassos was very developed. At this moment, the hero Leon and his companions entered the Adventurers Guild, causing waves of gasps along the way. The adventurers looked at Leon with admiration, continuously calling him Your Highness Leon. The hero Leon smiled warmly and politely nodded to everyone. He walked straight to the reception window of the Adventurers Guild and placed 2 gold coins in front of the receptionist. Beautiful lady, I need a map of the monster forest. May I ask if there are any in stock? Ah, Your Highness Leon, the receptionist exclaimed, not expecting to see the hero renowned across 4 nations at the border, momentarily lost in admiration. The hero Leon merely smiled, but the great thunder sorceress beside him was not pleased. Hey, Lord Leon is mine. You have no chance now. She clung to the hero Leon's arm, using the East African rift to perform a mechanical, repetitive friction motion. Ah, I'm sorry. The receptionist then realized her rudeness and hurriedly apologized. Leon the Brave smiled gently and patted the shoulder of the great mage Thunder. All right, Julie, don't be rude now. He made an apologetic expression towards the receptionist. Miss, the map. Oh, sure, please wait a moment. The receptionist stood up and went to the back room, and soon returned with a parchment map, laying it out in front of Leon the Brave. Leon glanced at it and asked, Miss, do you know the exile location of the Kosovo family? Which route did they take? The receptionist didn't understand why the hero was asking this, but still traced a circle on the map with her finger. The exile location of the Kosovo family is here, in a desolate area where adventurers usually don't hunt. Too deep into the monster forest, it's very dangerous, and there are no roads. The route the Kosovo family took to the exile location should be. Her finger followed the river marked as the Holy River. They should have gone east along the Holy River. During the dry season, parts of the riverbank will be exposed, making the path much easier. Leon the Brave pondered over the map for a moment, folded it up, thanked the receptionist, and exited the Adventurers Guild with his companions. The 4 quickly left the city, found the Holy River, and ran along it into the monster forest. The hero team moved eastward at a speed several times faster than the most skilled goblin hunting team. Young Master Lance's group lost half their members on the way to the exile location, but the hero team was laughing and joking, as relaxed as if on a picnic. At night, the hero team set up camp by the great river. The shield-wielding man carried a huge bundle on his back, and when he opened it, tents and cooking utensils were all revealed. The elf began to set up the tent, while the shield-wielding man gathered firewood and called out to Thunder, the chicken-cooking mage. Hey Julie, give me a hand. Julie leaned her head on the hero's shoulder, not turning back, and raised her hand to cast a fireball spell, igniting the pile of wood. The shield-wielding man whistled as he started cooking. The hero and the female mage looked at the great river. At that moment, the full moon hung high, and the vast river surface reflected the moon's image, creating a stunning scene. Prince Leon. Julie began to feel feverish, snuggling up to the hero. Let's get married, Prince Leon, and have 100 babies. Julie gazed at the hero's handsome face, saliva almost dripping. Leon the Brave smiled gently. Sorry, Julie, my heart only belongs to the goddess. Julie gritted her teeth. It's tough, but Prince Leon is so handsome, even if my rival is the goddess, I won't give up. Leon the Brave chuckled. Compared to becoming lovers, they were already the most important partners, and that was enough. Suddenly, the hero spotted a massive creature on the river's surface in the distance and exclaimed, Look, it's the Lord of the Holy River. Everyone who was busy turned to look at the river and gasped in amazement. It was a colossal creature whose body was over 100 meters long just above the water. If it weren't for Leon the Brave's extraordinary strength, one might think it was an island. It looks like a big loach. The elf named Wendini came to the riverbank, arms crossed, speaking with an arrogant tone. Leon the Brave quickly made a shushing gesture. Wendini, you mustn't be rude. The Lord of the Holy River is a legendary creature. Many people who rely on the river pray to it, and seeing it brings good luck. The elf named Wendini huffed again, but didn't say anything more. The group watched the giant fish for a while, and the shield-wielding man reminded, "All right everyone, it's time to eat." They gathered around the pot to eat, and Leon took a sip of soup, instantly feeling healed. "Maxie, your soup tastes good no matter how many times I drink it." The shield-wielding man named Maxie smiled warmly and served everyone a bowl of soup. For the next few days, the hero team traveled during the day and rested at night, completing in just 10 days the journey that young Master Lance's group had taken over a month to finish. The hero team discovered many things along the way: human corpses, abandoned tools, and horse carcasses. They would occasionally stop to collect the bodies of the deceased. Leon, the hero, wore a serious expression as he stood before a grave mound that held the remains of 5 people who had died on the road of exile. The elf Wendini stepped forward and placed a flower at the grave, her face showing no sadness or joy. "Don't worry about them, at least they didn't suffer much before they died. You should pray for those captured by the goblins, they are the ones truly living in hell." Disturbing images flooded Leon's mind, and he clenched his fists tightly. "I will drive out all the filth. No matter what those enslaved by goblins have become, I will bring them home." Wendini thought to herself that they were traitors and there was no way to bring them home, but she kept her thoughts to herself. The team continued onward, and around noon, they arrived at a special forest area, discovering many signs of upright creatures' activities. After careful examination, Wendini confirmed that the traces belonged to goblins as well as dog-headed men. "Dog-headed men?" Leon asked, puzzled. Wendini nodded. "It's definitely the dog-headed men. They seem to be acting alongside the goblins. Judging by the traces, they must be hunting together." Leon's expression darkened. Goblins were an extremely xenophobic group, and the only 2 scenarios for a dog-headed man to join a goblin tribe were to be eaten or to give birth to goblin offspring. The traces before them indicated that the goblins were utilizing the dog-headed men's keen sense of smell for hunting, and this organic combination of monsters released a very dangerous signal. After advancing a little further, they made another discovery. A white concrete monument was embedded in the ground, with the exposed part inscribed in a common human language: "Warning, you are entering the territory of the Alliance of Intelligent Beings. Armed individuals carrying armor, swords, bows, crossbows, or staves are prohibited from entering, otherwise, it will be considered provocation, and the Alliance of Intelligent Beings will hold your affiliated forces accountable." Above this text was a circular emblem with 4 stars inside. This was the prototype of the national flag, designed by Li Chan, with the 4 stars representing goblins, ogres, dog-headed men, and humans, all recognized members of the Alliance of Intelligent Beings. The Alliance of Intelligent Beings was Li Chan's banner to the outside world, and it was a large umbrella that could encompass anything. In the future, if any intelligent race was recognized by Li Chan to join, they would simply add a star to the circle. "This is a declaration of statehood for monsters?" Julie studied the monument closely and then burst into laughter. "Interesting. Ha ha ha." She jumped behind the monument, then jumped out, then back in again, and out once more. "Hey, I jumped in again, and now I'm out. Come on, hit me, you fool. Look, I have the prohibited staff. Behind me is the Mage Guild. How will you goblins hold the Mage Guild accountable?" She was hopping around when suddenly, a crossbow bolt shot out from the forest towards her. "Watch out!" The big shield warrior rushed in front of Julie, and the bolt struck his chest plate, leaving no mark at all. The 4 immediately entered combat mode, drawing their weapons. The big shield warrior raised his shield while the others hid behind him. They looked towards the source of the attack and saw over 30 bow-wielding goblins, with a dog-headed man glaring fiercely at them. The leading goblin shouted, "This is the territory of the Alliance of Intelligent Beings. That big female. You have entered our territory carrying a prohibited staff, which is a crime. Surrender immediately, blah blah blah." The goblins spoke in their language, which the hero team could not understand, mainly because they hadn't expected the goblins to communicate with them and hadn't activated the translation magic in advance. By the time they were curious about what the goblin was saying and activated the translation magic, the goblin had already finished speaking. "Damn it! How dare you ambush me, Zinniai!" Julie had a very fiery temper. Upon seeing the goblins, she couldn't be bothered to chatter. She simply raised her staff and cast a fireball. Her fireball was far more powerful than Miss Hannah's. One fireball landed in the midst of the goblin hunting party, exploding with the force of a 75mm mountain cannon shell, sending goblin flesh and blood flying as they screamed in agony. But that wasn't all. Following the first fireball were 3 more, a series of explosions and flames erupting among the goblin hunting party, directly reducing their numbers by more than half. The surviving goblins were terrified, dropping their bows and crossbows and fleeing. Wow! Chase them down, kill, kill, kill! Julie shouted excitedly, charging after them, and the others followed suit. Leon glanced back at the stone tablet and then joined the chase. The goblins stood no chance against the hero team. Even in the forest, they were relentlessly hunted down, with fireballs and arrows flying everywhere, and the goblin hunting party was soon reduced to single digits. The last goblin, just before dying, pulled a ceramic cylinder from his pocket, lit the fuse at the end, and pointed the head towards the sky. Whoosh! Bang! A small firework shot up into the sky and exploded, while Leon swiftly severed the last goblin's head with his sword. Leon looked up, seeing the white smoke left by the fireworks in the sky. He didn't know what it was or what it was for. Was it magic or something else? There was no magical fluctuation, either. Just as he was about to ask Julie, the sound of fireworks exploding echoed again from the distant sky. 1, 2, 3, continuously. Leon stared at the distant fireworks, murmuring, "They know we're coming." In front of Goblin Fortress, the musket-wielding goblins in training all looked up in unison at the fireworks in the distant forest. Li Chen's expression hardened as he roared at the soldiers. "Enemy attack! Get into combat positions as trained. Commanders, keep your troops in check. Anyone who dares to leave their position will be executed on the spot." He put the whistle in his mouth and began to blow sharply. The goblin musketeers snapped out of their training state, quickly grabbing their weapons and running to form ranks in front of Goblin Fortress. The goblin musketeers moved with incredible speed, lining up 50 in a row, filling the area in front of the fortress. Their ranks were as straight as if measured with a ruler. They had practiced this countless times, with not a single extraneous movement. The new cardboard cartridges filled with gunpowder were taken out from wooden boxes coated with moisture-proof paint by the squad leaders. This type of ammunition, which combined gunpowder and projectiles, was very convenient for loading. Soldiers only needed to bite open the powder bag and stuff the black powder, paper, and projectiles into their guns. The only downside was that Li Chen's paper mill couldn't produce oil paper, so the cardboard cartridges were not moisture-proof. The bullets issued to the soldiers had to be fired within 2 days, or the chances of ignition would significantly decrease. The goblin musketeers were busily preparing, and the hero team had also arrived. A dozen goblin hunting team members rushed out of the forest in a panic, running towards the fortress like madmen. They hadn't gone far when a dozen arrows shot out, accurately striking them in the back of the head, followed by several fireballs that turned their bodies into mush. The 4 members of the hero team burst out of the forest, momentarily stunned by the vast farmland before them. They had expected to see a settlement devastated by goblins, but what lay ahead were neatly divided plots of farmland, flourishing green crops, more orderly than some lords' estates. "Look over there." When Dini pointed at the goblins below the fortress, who were lined up in neat rows, their eyes fixed intently on the group. The others felt a shock again. With so many goblins gathered together, how strong must their leader be? It had been nearly 100 years since such a large goblin tribe had appeared. Maxi raised his shield and stepped to the front. "I've never seen the weapons in their hands. Everyone, get behind the shield. What should we do next, Prince Leon? Should we charge in and eliminate them directly?" Oh, my fireball spell is itching to be unleashed." Julie waved her staff, ready to make a big impact. With these goblins lined up, her fireball could take out a dozen of them in one shot. Leon also wanted his companions to muster their courage and rush in to defeat the enemy, but the goblins were already making a move. Li Chen sent out a recruited sinner soldier, who was unarmed, holding only a round flag of the Alliance of Intelligent Beings as he approached the hero. As he got closer, Wendini raised her bow to shoot, but the hero held her back. Let's hear what he has to say. The 4 present could all cast spells, though their focuses differed. They activated their translation magic, eager to hear what this suspected messenger goblin had to say. The sinner soldier stopped about 30 meters in front of the hero, recalled Li Chen's words, and shouted loudly, "Armed individuals ahead, listen. You have entered the territory of the Alliance of Intelligent Beings and have cruelly killed our citizens. I now issue you a final ultimatum. Lay down your weapons and accept punishment, or we will take military action." The expressions of the 4 were quite strange. TMD, after traveling across the continent for so long, having eradicated at least 800 goblin nests, this was the first time they had received a final ultimatum from a goblin. They couldn't help but laugh, but Leon the hero did not laugh. His mindset shifted slightly. Why did it feel like a simple goblin extermination mission had turned into a guilt trip for invading another country? Julie, with the shortest temper, laughed heartily, and then raised her staff to unleash an instant fireball spell, blowing the goblin messenger into a pile of flesh. This is too amusing. These goblins are so entertaining. A bunch of goblins playing the game of Kingdom Lords, and they can even arrange their troops. I can't wait to catch their king. Ha 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 ha. After laughing, she charged into the farmland, rushing towards Goblin Fortress. She needed to get close enough to unleash her fireball with maximum power. The others followed her lead, not wanting to let their companion go alone. But Julie ran too fast, and with little weight on her, the heavily armored Maxi couldn't catch up to provide cover. On the wall, Li Chen saw the enemy launching an attack and they were running exceptionally fast, with the foremost being a mage, a threat second only to the hero. He was overjoyed. He ordered the goblin spearman beside him, prepare to fire. The goblin spearman whistled in rhythm. The soldiers in the trench immediately perked up, slightly adjusting their matchlocks, aiming at the human female running in front. Li Chen coldly watched the two approaching thunderclouds, silently calculating the distance: 500 meters, 400 meters, 300 meters, 200 meters, 150 meters. At around 150 meters, the thunderclouds stopped and began casting spells. Li Chen thought it was a good opportunity and shouted, "Fire!" The goblin spearmen raised their pistols and fired into the air, and all the matchlock goblins in the trench simultaneously ignited their guns, sending nearly 1,000 projectiles hurtling towards Julie. As the running hero Leon's pupils constricted, he sensed a great terror ahead and shouted urgently, "Julie, get down!" Unfortunately, it was too late. Only the hero was blessed by the goddess of life, possessing a strong sixth sense, while the others were merely stronger mortals, unable to perceive the threat in advance. At the moment the guns fired, Leon's body went limp and he nearly collapsed to the ground. His companion, the powerful mage who admired him so much, had vanished completely before his eyes, leaving only a puddle of minced flesh and tattered mage robes on the ground. The only intact item was the large purple mage hat. Leon, what should we do? Continue the attack or retreat for now? Leon. Maxie tried to rouse Leon, urging him to give orders, but Leon was just a 16 or 17-year-old boy who had previously sailed smoothly through life under the protection of the goddess of life. He had never encountered such a situation. Now, his companion and ambiguous love interest, Julie, had turned into Julie Paste, and Leon's brain simply crashed. He was in a daze, but the cruelly trained gun-wielding goblins were not dazed at all. Before turning into paste, Julie had cast 4 fireballs. 2 landed in front of the line of gun-wielding goblins, exploding into the ground, while the other 2 landed within the line, killing or injuring about 20. Several gun-wielding goblins with broken legs and feet screamed in agony, but the others showed no fear whatsoever, not even glancing at the dead. One could only say they had been forged by Li Chen. Losing this many was just a drop in the bucket, a mere rounding error in their kill count. Who were they trying to scare? They quickly blew into the firing chamber to clear the residue, grabbed the leather powder pouch hanging from their chests, poured gunpowder into the firing chamber, and closed the powder chamber lid. They pulled out the cardboard cartridges, tore open the powder bags with their teeth, stuffed the entire cardboard into the gun barrel, compressed it with a ramrod, took a breath on the match cord, and pressed down the match hammer to prepare it for firing, raising their guns, waiting for the shooting command. The entire process took about 25 seconds, and Li Chen felt this speed was too slow. If they evolved to flintlock guns, they could save the time spent adjusting the match cord, saving a second or two. If they used breechloading, they could save another second or two, if they could conquer the firing pin, the percussion cap. Boss, ready. Goblin Spear raised his pistol. He had just finished loading his gun, and generally speaking, when he completed loading, the soldiers would have finished loading as well, serving as a reference standard. Li Chen looked towards the distant hero squad, which had initially divided the infantry into lines out of fear of the mage's fireball spells. Now that the mage was gone, they need not worry about excessive casualties and could adopt a more concentrated and sustained 3-section firing formation. Li Chen ordered, change formation, 3-section firing, prepare to fire continuously, keep the pressure on the enemy. Open the city gates, let the suicide squad in. Goblin Spear put the whistle in his mouth and blew it according to a special rhythm. The company commander and deputy commander below heard the whistle and ordered the troops to change formation into 3 rows. Once the formation was complete, the first row of gun-wielding goblins raised their guns and fired, then passed their guns to the ones behind them to keep firing, continuously projecting firepower. The heroes in the distance were still in a daze. One could only say that the heroes, renowned across the 4 human nations, were just boys after all, their minds not mature enough, relying entirely on the goddess's protection to conquer the world. Although they had sailed smoothly thus far, they easily faltered in extreme situations. Like now, the gun-wielding goblins had completed a round of reloading and formation change, while he was still standing there in a daze. Fortunately, the big shield warrior, Maxie, was reliable enough. He ran in front of the hero, raising his large shield to protect him from the impending attack. The elf Wendini also ducked behind the 2 to take cover. Just as they completed their defense, a barrage of bullets erupted, and Maxie tensed his muscles against the shield, dozens of bullets crashing against it, shattering and sending sparks flying, producing a series of grating metallic sounds that made one grimace, with numerous dents appearing on the large shield. Maxie felt as if he had been hit by a magical bear. The impact of so many large-caliber bullets nearly made him lose his grip on the shield. He could only plant the shield into the ground and brace his entire body against it. After making adjustments, the 3-shot musket goblins quickly fired their second and third rounds, the shields clattering incessantly under the fierce firepower that left the 3 unable to lift their heads. At this moment, the brave Leon snapped back to reality from feelings of friendship and bonds. His eyes burned red with a desire for vengeance for his companions, but reason told him to retreat and regroup for now. He immediately shouted, "Maxie, We need to fall back to the forest. The weapons used by these goblins were too strange, they needed time to think. Everyone hide behind me, we'll retreat slowly. Maxie shouted, raising his shield and stepping back slowly. Bullets kept striking his shield, making his retreat painfully slow, but if they maintained this momentum, they could still manage to escape. However, at that moment, the booming sound of the muskets suddenly stopped, just stopped. Very abruptly. Hiding behind the shield, Leon suddenly felt a wave of panic, and overwhelming terror was approaching. What was it? Leon peeked around the side of the shield and saw 5 large goblins had somehow appeared to the side. Another 5 were coming from the opposite direction, they were being sandwiched from both sides. These large goblins had exceptionally developed leg muscles and moved with incredible speed, running across the uneven farmland as if it were flat ground. They carried no weapons but wore a beastskin coat that bound a pitch-black cylinder to their chests. Run! Run fast! Leon the Brave immediately warned his 2 companions. Although he didn't know what that black canister was, his sixth sense was never wrong. The other 2 trusted Leon immensely. Many times in their past adventures, they had relied on his sixth sense to get out of trouble, so without a second thought, they began to flee. Leon and Wendini were fine. Both were quick and managed to retreat into the forest after a few swift dodges. But Maxie couldn't move as fast. He was clad in heavy armor and carrying a massive shield that could withstand multiple rounds of musket fire, making his burden immense. Leon and Wendini had already entered the forest, and when they looked back, Maxie was still running in the field, mainly because he was unwilling to abandon the large shield, which slowed him down considerably. Behind Maxie, 10 self-destructing goblins charged at him like the wind, closing the distance at a terrifying speed, and it looked like Maxie was about to be caught. Cover me! Leon the Brave drew his sword, chanted a spell, and unleashed a beam of magical sword light. The sword light shot out, cleaving one self-destructing goblin in half from top to bottom. Wendini drew her bow, shooting arrow after arrow, each one capable of killing a self-destructing goblin, her accuracy terrifying. However, the self-destructing goblins had undergone specialized training, running as fast as Olympic hurdle athletes, and they were closing in on Maxie at a frightening pace. Leon and Wendini attacked with all their might, killing one self-destructing goblin after another, until only one remained. The last self-destructing goblin was quite clever. It ran to directly behind Maxie, using his body to shield itself from incoming attacks. Maxie! Leon cried out in despair. Maxie, unaware of the situation, instinctively turned to look, only to lock eyes with the self-destructing goblin that had come up behind him. The goblin's face was twisted with fear, yet it still pushed itself to keep up with Maxie's pace. The distance was sufficient. This self-destructing goblin followed the procedure it had practiced hundreds of times, shoving a cap filled with fuses against the bottleneck. Boom! A violent explosion engulfed the surroundings, shrouding Maxie's body in thick smoke. The massive door shield was hurled high into the sky by the blast, then fell to the ground like a gravestone, and hanging from the handle of the shield were 2 thick arms clad in gauntlets. As the smoke cleared, a mangled body lay on the ground. To Li Chen's surprise, the big shield warrior was still alive. He revealed that the goblin was his system soldier and he would receive notifications when his system soldiers killed enemies, just like the kill notifications in Mount and Blade 2. But there were none now, which proved that the opponent was still alive. Li Chen was shocked by the big shield warrior's resilience, but since the opponent was now injured and no longer a threat, he shifted his focus and began to think about how to deal with the hero. At that moment, the hero and the female elf dashed into the forest, and he was contemplating the pros and cons of sending people into the forest to encircle them. If he sent the self-destructing goblins, given the dense vegetation in the forest, the chances of the self-destructing goblins reaching the hero and detonating themselves would greatly increase. Li Chen still had 40 self-destructing goblins under his command and was about to send them all out when suddenly, his eyelids began to twitch uncontrollably, and his eyes felt prickly, as if someone was waving a needle in front of him. Not good. Li Chen felt a chill run down his spine and leaped to the side. Just as he crouched down, a sharp arrow shot past the spot where he had just been standing, embedding itself in the wooden wall behind him. Li Chen got up and looked back, noticing a fist-sized hole in the wall. From the edge of the forest to Goblin Fortress, a distance of about 12 to 1300 meters, this arrow had the power of a sniper rifle. Li Chen glanced towards the forest's edge, where the hero and the female elf had just rushed in, now standing at the forest's edge. They were staring intently at Li Chen, their hatred almost palpable. Wendini had just charged her bow and shot a sniper arrow, but unfortunately, the goblin leader was too alert, and she missed. Wendini stomped her foot but did not shoot a second arrow. She slung her bow behind her back, knelt on the ground, spread her arms to embrace the sky, and began to chant a lengthy spell. Li Chen sniffed. He smelled moisture. There was humidity in the air. After Wendini finished her chant, the next moment, it actually started to rain sun showers at Goblin Fortress. The sun showers drenched the line of gunner goblins. The rain was fast and heavy, soaking everyone within seconds, and also wetting their gunpowder in fuses. Li Chen's expression changed. Damn it. No wonder they were heroes. Just by using firearms a few times, they figured out how this thing worked. They were incredibly sharp. Now it was bad, his most powerful, display had lost its effectiveness. How could he compete with the hero now? After casting the spell, Wendini felt weak all over and nearly collapsed. Leon caught her waist and helped her up. Wendini's face was full of exhaustion, her beautiful eyes fixed on the boy, whose once handsome face was now filled with pain and hatred. I'm sorry, Leon, this is all I can do. The spell had completely drained her body, and now she could barely draw her bow. Leon slowly helped Wendini up, offering her a bitter smile. I'm sorry, Wendini, it's my fault that everyone fell into danger. I will take revenge for everyone, leave the rest to me. Wendini nodded, staggering into the forest. She had no combat ability left and would only be a burden to Leon if she stayed. After Wendini retreated, Leon, the hero, drew his sword, and a terrifying aura erupted around him, his gaze cold as he pointed his sword at Li Chen on Goblin Fortress. Li Chen met Leon's gaze from a distance, squinting his eyes and shouting coldly, "Do you think we won't fight just because we don't have firearms? Pass my orders, fix bayonets." Chirp, 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 chirp. At the sound of a short whistle followed by two long ones, the gunner goblins swiftly drew their bayonets and attached them to their gun muzzles. Li Chen issued another command: 2nd and 3rd squads, 1st echelon charge; 4th and 5th squads, 2nd echelon charge; 6th and 7th squads, 3rd echelon charge; 9th and 10th squads, 4th echelon charge. 1st squad stay behind to supervise. Anyone who turns to flee will be killed without mercy. After saying this, he turned to look at Goblin Fortress, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. Goblin Spear, I'll give you 3 seasoned warriors. You'll sneak into the forest from the side and bring me that female elf's head. If you can't do it, then just take your own life. Goblin Spear felt a chill in his heart and immediately saluted. I guarantee I will complete the task. He led the 3 seasoned warriors out of the city from the back, taking a wide detour to enter the forest from the flank, quietly making their way towards the forest behind the hero. Just moments ago, Li Chen had seen clearly that the female elf nearly fainted after casting her spell. Controlling the weather was no small feat. He didn't believe this woman could shoot such powerful arrows again. Since she dared to invade his territory, she should leave her head behind. At this moment, the hero Leon entered a berserk state, his face filled with murderous intent as he stepped forward, his speed increasing rapidly. Behind him, the goblins with firearms began to run. Meanwhile, a special military whistle sounded from the ranks of the firearm goblins. Peep, 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 kill. This was the charge order. The 2nd and 3rd squads of firearm goblins charged forward, with their bayonets, letting out a sharp cry as they rushed towards the hero without hesitation. Facing the charge of 200 firearm goblins, Leon snorted coldly, his speed increasing even more. At the moment of contact, Leon casually swung his sword, a flash of light slicing the leading squad leader in half. The squad leader of the 3rd squad howled as he rushed up, raising his axe to strike down, but Leon met it with a sword strike, cleaving the axe like tofu, and without any restraint, he turned the squad leader into minced meat. As the two sides collided, Leon was not overwhelmed by the charge of over 200 goblins. He seemed like a humanoid tank, effortlessly cutting through the firearm goblins, sending blood and flesh flying. Leon slashed left and right, his sword cutting through iron like mud, instantly killing about 10 goblins and clearing a small space. One goblin howled as it lunged at Leon with a bayonet, but Leon swiftly struck, slicing the firearm goblin in half, and with a second strike he sent the goblin's head flying. 3 more bayonets stabbed from behind, and Leon turned, unleashing a flash of his sword, killing all 3 goblins. He was like a god of war, attacking left and right, with 200 goblins wailing in despair. Amidst the flying blood and flesh, his armor was stained red, then washed off by the sun and rain, only to be stained red again. After nearly 10 minutes of slaughter, fewer than 100 of the 200 goblins remained. They were terrified and dropped their firearms, scrambling to flee. Leon panted heavily, watching the fleeing goblins with a smug smile on his face. This was how goblins should be slaughtered, and then fleeing, just a bunch of rabble. However, he did not realize what it meant for an army to flee after losing 50% of its numbers. But it didn't matter, he was immediately shocked by the goblins' next move. He saw that the panicking goblins did not return to their ranks but were instead met by another group of goblins holding firearms, who stabbed their bayonets directly into the fleeing goblins' bellies, killing them on the spot. Leon's eyes widened in disbelief. These deserters were ones he had intentionally let go, based on his previous experience of exterminating goblin nests. If one goblin fled, the rest would follow. Once the rabble had run away, he could save some energy to hunt down that special goblin leader. However, all of this turned to dust as the first squad of firearm goblins killed all the deserters, and the rout did not occur. The other goblins stood firm in their positions. Li Chen's voice came from the city wall. 2nd echelon, advance. Kill the hero, seal the general title, and let the deserters die. The soldiers of the 4th and 5th squads raised their bayonets, shouting as they charged towards the hero amidst the peep 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 of the military whistle. Just as Leon finished dealing with one wave of enemies and was catching his breath, the second wave of enemies arrived immediately, leaving him no time to adjust his breathing as he quickly raised his sword to meet them. The two sides collided once more, and it was still a scene of limbs flying and screams echoing. Leon simply changed his combat style, starting to use more energy-efficient methods to kill enemies, such as thrusting and a swift cut to the throat. This time, Li Chen did not wait for the morale of the second wave to drop to zero before sending the third wave into battle. With the addition of fresh forces, the goblins fought even more fiercely, launching wave after wave of attacks, causing Leon's stamina to dwindle. Leon breathed heavily, exhausted like an old ox that had plowed 10 acres of land. Beneath his feet, a pile of corpses formed a small hill, yet the stabbing blades coming from all directions continued relentlessly. Leon could no longer evade all the attacks. He relied on his fine armor to withstand some of the blows, only needing to protect his handsome face and the back of his head. A dagger from the left, a rifle but from the right, struck Leon, making him stagger. He swung his sword with all his might, severing the neck of a goblin in front of him, blood spraying onto his face, momentarily blinding him. In the brief moment he wiped his eyes, he felt something hit the back of his knee, causing him to grunt and kneel on one knee. Immediately after, he felt a sharp pain at the back of his head and quickly turned his head to the side just as a rifle butt smashed into his shoulder plate. Leon seized the musket with one hand, grabbed the barrel, and swung it around fiercely, the butt striking the original owner's head with a loud thud, splattering brains everywhere. Just as he dealt with the threat behind him, a squad leader charged at him, swinging an axe down fiercely. The squad leader was either a goblin warrior or a seasoned fighter, immensely strong. Leon raised his sword to block, but the blade was forced down a few inches. Leon was utterly exhausted, his heart filled with shock. Why? Why were these goblins so fearless? Why couldn't these goblins be shaken off? Leon pushed the axe back with all his strength, and as the squad leader swung a second time, he thrust his sword, piercing it into the squad leader's mouth, ending him. Leon wanted to rise, but the musket goblin had managed to force him to kneel, not allowing him to do as he wished. A goblin shouted and grabbed his waist, trying to pin him down. Leon retaliated with a sharp elbow strike, smashing the goblin's nose into its face, killing it instantly. The goblins, now bloodthirsty, all pounced on Leon, the scene descending into chaos, with hands grabbing, feet holding, and arms wrapping around his waist. Leon couldn't break free, howling as he was pressed to the ground, and then one by one, the goblins piled on him, forming a mountain. On the city wall, Li Chen was overjoyed. It worked. Just as this thought crossed his mind, he suddenly felt the magical elements in the air become exceptionally dense. With a loud bang, the pile of bodies pressing down on Leon exploded, human bodies spinning into the air. Leon let out a thunderous scream as he stood up from the pile, the gathered magical elements swirling into his body like particle effects, a pair of pure white wings extending from his back, and the sword in his hand becoming sharper. Die! All goblins must die! Leon raised his hand and unleashed 10 sword lights, killing 10 goblins. He lowered his body like a spring filled with power, then burst forth, charging into the goblin horde and slaughtering them at will. The goddess pendant hanging on his chest cracked and turned to dust. It was his most precious treasure, and he was furious now. The goblins' screams echoed throughout the battlefield again, their lives melting away like snowflakes. Li Chen's expression darkened further. The damned hero actually had a second phase and had grown 2 pairs of wings, seemingly increasing in speed. This was too much. The goblins around Leon were quickly reduced to single digits. Even the fleeing goblins were caught and killed by him. It seemed this guy had truly gone mad with killing. Li Chen glanced at the 3 companies below the city wall, 300 men, and realized there were so few left. Could they possibly defeat the hero? He noticed Leon occasionally casting fierce glances his way, those eyes seeming to say, "I will kill you." Li Chen slammed his fist against the city wall, a fierce killing intent bursting forth from his eyes. Want to kill me? Then let's see whose blade is faster. He knew this guy had locked onto him, and running away was pointless. Since that was the case, he would shoulder everything and fight to the death. Li Chen drew the great sword from his back and leaped down from the not-so-high city wall. He landed among the 3 squads of soldiers, looking into their eyes. The soldiers' faces were filled with fear, they were terrified. The distant hero was slaughtering indiscriminately, surrounded by corpses. Rather than being a hero of the goddess of life, he was more like a chosen one of terror. The soldiers of the 3 squads were extremely restless, wanting to flee, but the next moment they heard the familiar sound of the military whistle. Tweet, 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 tweet. A short and a long note, the charge signal. All the goblins instinctively raised their bayonets and charged towards the rampaging hero. Aha! Their eyes were filled with fear, yet they still screamed and charged forward. Instinct told them to run, but day after day of training, the officers' angry shouts, the military clubs, the brutal discipline, and the leader at the front made them defy their biological instincts and charge towards death. Soldiers, put everything on the line. Kill this despicable invader, kill this evil anti-intelligence biological entity, and defend our homeland. Li Chen hoisted the great sword onto his shoulder, shouting as he charged, with the 300 soldiers behind him shouting and charging as well. Among these goblins, 1/3 were system soldiers, stationed in Goblin Fortress and certified by the system. That's why Li Chen dared to initiate the final charge. Even if the other 200 ran away, at least 100 would follow him to confront the hero. Fortunately, goblins are social monsters. Once everyone charged, they all got hyped up. The power of the group was Immense, despite being terrified, no one fled. Transformed into his white wing form, Leon, blessed by the goddess of life, had his translation magic automatically activated. He understood Li Chen's charge, declaration and was left dumbfounded. What the hell? I'm the invader? Goblins defending their homeland? I'm an anti-intelligence biological entity now? It felt absurd, but upon reflection, what he was doing did seem quite similar to invading another country, didn't it? The monster forest, in the eyes of human secular values, indeed belonged to the monsters. Monsters establishing a nation in the monster forest seemed reasonable, right? So, was his current behavior still just? Leon looked at the charging goblins. Their faces were filled with fear, yet they still held their weapons and charged at him, looking just like human soldiers defending their homeland, charging at the invincible demon race. Leon felt a bit dazed, questioning the righteousness of his actions. Li Chen charged forward, raising his great sword and striking down fiercely. Leon quickly regained his senses, raising his sword to block, thinking he would easily deflect this strike and then cleave Li Chen in half. But what he didn't expect was that Li Chen's sword was extraordinarily heavy and charged with power, knocking him back several steps. Leon gasped. This goblin was surprisingly strong. Without waiting for him to steady himself, Li Chen charged again, swinging his sword at the hero's waist. Leon didn't have time to react and was sent flying by the blow, but he didn't fall. The two pure white wings behind him flapped a few times, helping him stabilize his form. He looked at Li Chen in disbelief. How could he, blessed by the goddess of life, be knocked away by a single strike? Li Chen was also feeling the impact. Those two strikes felt like they hit an anvil, numbing his hands and making his bones ache. The armor on the hero's body was dented where it was struck, but Li Chen noticed something was off. That was a very thin armor, unlike the 10mm thick precious material he wore. Yet, how could such a lightweight thing withstand the heavy sword's attack? It must be made of special materials. If it were any other time, Li Chen would have thought of 1,000 new industrial uses for materials, but now he could only focus his mind and continue attacking the hero. Just as he was about to charge at the hero again, the hero steadied himself and unleashed a sword light, causing Li Chen to instinctively dive to the side, landing in the muddy water. The spot where he had been standing was cleaved into a trench by the sword light. Li Chen wanted to get up quickly, but the sun shower kept pouring down, making the farmland extremely muddy and slippery. He found himself unable to stand up for a moment. Leon saw this as a good opportunity and rushed in, intending to finish Li Chen with a single strike, but the gun-wielding goblins charged in, surrounding him, forcing him to engage in a chaotic melee with the minions. 2 sword strikes killed a fierce sergeant, and Leon wanted to break out of the encirclement to find Li Chen, but waves of goblins kept coming, their bayonets and rifle stocks raining down on him like a storm. Damn invaders! Die! Die! You want to take away the land we've worked so hard to cultivate, you damned bastard! You even want to steal my beloved wood mouse, leave your life behind. Leon cursed inwardly. What the hell does stealing your wood mouse even mean? He concentrated magic into his sword, which began to glow, and he swung out a powerful sword light, slashing down 7 or 8 goblins in front of him. The goblins that were struck let out a series of wails, collapsing to the ground as corpses, but the other goblins were not frightened, or rather, the system's soldiers were not frightened. They continued to pounce on him, stepping over the bodies of their fallen comrades. Leon unleashed 3 more powerful sword lights in quick succession, killing over 20 more. This terrifying sword light took a toll on him, and the pure white wings on his back dimmed a bit as he began to breathe heavily, showing signs of fatigue. The goblin assault was like waves. No matter how hard you pushed them back, they surged forward madly, as if it were an inexorable law of nature. Leon panicked. Why? Why were these goblins so fierce? What on earth was going on? Goblins, these monsters, weren't they supposed to be easily wiped out by any farmer? Why were the goblins before him as formidable as a battle-hardened human army? Leon suddenly recalled the words of the steward Mond before he was burned to death in the capital square. You must kill that guy as soon as possible. That guy is using order to regulate the goblins. He is cultivating land, building infrastructure, and training a professional army. If he is allowed to develop further, he will definitely establish a monster nation, and he will become a great threat to humanity. At that moment, Leon fully understood the steward Mond's words. That guy must be killed. He must be killed. Leon made up his mind. This was not only for the future of humanity but also because of a vague unease in his heart. Clearly, his companions had died at the hands of these goblins, but why did he feel a sense of guilt for invading their land? Kill that special goblin. Everything will end. Ha! Where is that special goblin? Leon slashed down a few more goblins in front of him, searching for Li Chen's figure. Suddenly, a sharp sensation came from behind Leon. He instinctively swung a sword light backward. Li Chen took the sword light with his plate armor, grunting in pain, but he resolutely raised his great sword and struck down fiercely. Leon's eyes widened in an attempt to dodge, but it was too late. Li Chen's great sword came crashing down on the 2 chicken wings behind him. Ah! Leon let out a fierce scream as his magical wings were severed, and he was hit by a violent backlash of magic, feeling as if his mind was being torn apart by chaotic magic. He covered his head and unleashed several sword lights, killing the goblins in front of him, while a few managed to leap out of the encirclement, landing in the distant mud and retching. Li Chen looked at the wings slowly dissipating on the ground. He had just been curious whether the thing growing behind the hero was a physical entity or a magical creation, and now seeing it slowly fade away, it was undoubtedly a magical creation. Although he didn't know what the wings were for, the hero could barely stand, so this thing must be very important. The hero must have suffered a severe blow. Leon had indeed been heavily injured. Those wings were a blessing granted to him by the dissipated magic from the shattered pendant of the goddess of life. The wings acted like a vacuum cleaner, drawing the magic from the air into his body, allowing him to quickly recover his magic and unleash the massive swordlight more rapidly. However, this thing had been severed by Li Chen, and his magic recovery had returned to normal, making it impossible for him to use the swordlight without restraint. Li Chen touched the armor on his chest, where a terrifying slash mark appeared. He stomped down, shattering the two wings, spat out a mouthful of bloodied saliva, and charged forward with his great sword, followed closely by the other goblins. Leon angrily thumped his head. The backlash from the magic left him dizzy and nearly unable to stand. The goblins charged again, and with no other choice, he reached into his armor and pulled out a glass test tube containing some kind of blood-red potion. He tossed the entire potion into his mouth and bit down on the glass tube. Leon grunted, blood-red filling his eyes, his body trembling violently as he steadied himself and coldly glared at Li Chen. "You damn it, you still have a third phase." Li Chen roared in anger and charged forward with a sword strike. Then something that shocked Li Chen happened. Leon's speed surged several times, and with a speed that left afterimages, he swung his sword, cutting Li Chen's exaggeratedly heavy great sword in half. Then, in a flash, Leon swung down at Li Chen. Li Chen's pupils shrank to the size of pinpricks, instinctively stepping back and raising his left hand to block, but his left hand, along with the armor, was severed. Before the pain could register in his brain, Leon kicked him in the chest armor, sending him flying over 10 meters into the mud. After doing all this, Leon spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura diminished to more than 3 times. The remaining goblins rushed up to fight him, but his sword-swinging speed became extremely slow. After the explosive use of the potion, he entered a weakened state, yet he still slaughtered the goblins, causing them to scream in agony. Li Chen, who had been kicked away, felt dizzy. He thought he had hit the jackpot. His chest armor was completely caved in, and several ribs were broken. Li Chen coughed up a large mouthful of blood, staggering as he tried to get up, but he simply couldn't do it. After struggling for a while with no success, he raised his left hand to look. His entire left arm was gone, leaving only a neatly severed wound that was gushing blood. Li Chen directly plunged the severed end of his left arm into the mud, forcibly using the dirt to slow the bleeding. As Li Chen attempted to rise, the remaining goblins began to flee as Leon killed them. Their morale had hit rock bottom, and they fled into the forest, disappearing completely, leaving only a dozen system soldiers still battling Leon. Leon swayed, covered in blood. He looked like a severely injured man on the verge of death, yet he still stood there with his sword raised. The last few system soldier goblins charged at once. Leon thrust his sword to the left and slashed to the right, killing the goblins one by one as they fell into the mud. The last gunner goblin lunged at Leon with a bayonet, but Leon tilted his head to dodge the stab. However, his stamina had reached its limit, and his speed in evading was a bit slow, resulting in his ear being pierced off. Leon let out a scream, covering his ear, and casually swung his sword, killing the last gunner goblin. At this point, the armed forces that Li Chen had painstakingly cultivated were completely annihilated. The battlefield returned to silence, and Leon stood in the rain, gasping heavily. Due to consuming the explosive potion, his eyes were blood-red, and he had lost his ability to perceive color. Everything in his vision was black and white, a side effect of the potion that was irreversible. In this black and white perspective, he saw a rainbow appear in the distant sky, as if the goddess was celebrating his victory. The great goddess of life sheltered him, and the brave Leon once again triumphed over the evil monsters. The rain had stopped, and the air was extremely clean, but the strong smell of blood lingered. Leon looked at Li Chen, who was lying in the mud, his teeth suddenly clenching. He never expected that a goblin could push him to this extent. He staggered towards Li Chen, who struggled to get up, but the kick from the hero had shattered countless ribs, and with one hand lost in the ground covered in mud, he simply couldn't rise. Leon walked step by step to Li Chen's side, stepping on his chest plate. He looked down at Li Chen, his sword pressed against his throat. "Beast, is the kingdom's game fun?" With the sword against his throat, Li Chen no longer tried to get up. He looked into Leon's crimson eyes and coughed up a mouthful of blood. "The rain has stopped," he said. Leon frowned. This was not what he wanted to hear. He wanted to hear the goblin's miserable pleas for mercy. "What do you mean?" He cough cough. Li Chen laughed as he coughed up more blood, his expression suddenly turning frenzied. "What I mean is, my lord, the times have changed." A hand cannon suddenly appeared in his intact right hand, the muzzle aimed directly at the hero's head. Leon felt his heart gripped by the claws of a dragon, a sense of crisis crashing over him like a tide. Li Chen pulled the trigger, and in the blink of an eye, Leon's expression turned to terror. He raised his left hand to shield his face, but it was already too late. The steel balls and iron sand covered his face. With a bang, the gun fired, and Leon stumbled back 2 steps before collapsing straight down into the mud. His head was not blown apart by the steel balls, but his face was riddled with holes. The air fell into silence. Only Li Chen's heavy breathing could be heard. Is he dead? Has he finally died? Li Chen asked himself, his tense body relaxing, a wave of extreme fatigue washing over him. He was so tired, he wanted to sleep. Just as he was about to completely relax, his heart tightened suddenly. Something was wrong. The hero was not dead. The cavalry system did not display a kill notification. Li Chen felt a chill run down his spine, and the next moment, the hero crawled up from the mud like a ghost returning from hell. His body was covered in mud and blood, various unknown pieces of internal organs hanging from the gaps in his armor. His once handsome face had turned into a devil's visage, large steel balls tearing apart his facial muscles, the entire left cheek ripped away, exposing his jaw. His eyes had also been destroyed by the steel balls, losing the ability to see. Leon covered his face, screaming in agony. He could not see, which filled him with extreme panic. After the initial shock, Li Chen's facial muscles gradually twisted together. Damn it! Can't you die? Are you so unwilling to die? Li Chen roared, a surge of power rising from his battered body as he pushed himself up from the muddy ground with one hand. He quickly accessed the warehouse page, retrieving a hand cannon. He immediately raised the hand cannon to shoot at Leon, but this thing felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds to him now. Li Chen could only lift the cannon with his bleeding left arm, using both hands to forcefully aim the muzzle at Leon's head. Leon was blind, but his sixth sense remained. A great terror approached, and he bent down with his back to Li Chen, bracing himself with his sturdy back armor to absorb the attack. Li Chen pulled the trigger, and with a loud bang, the steel ball shot out, hitting Leon's back and sending sparks flying. Leon let out a scream and charged forward several steps. The tremendous recoil caused the hand cannon to fly out of Li Chen's hands, but he didn't care. He took out a second hand cannon from the cavalry warehouse, raising the muzzle to aim at Leon's back. However, this time, before he could fire, Leon swung his sword, the blade spinning as it shattered the hand cannon, the flying blade also slicing Li Chen's right hand in half. Li Chen let out a painful groan as several fingers and parts of his hand cannon fell into the muddy water. Had he lost all his attacking capabilities? Li Chen's eyes were like those of a venomous snake, fixated on Leon's back. This guy had completely annihilated his army, which was the foundation of his rule. Destroy my foundation, and we cannot coexist. Leon felt Li Chen's gaze, the intense killing intent, sending chills down his spine. He let out a terrified scream and stumbled toward the edge of the forest. He was actually afraid. He was afraid. The renowned hero of the 4 human kingdoms, blessed by the goddess of life, was actually afraid. He wanted to escape, and Li Chen immediately gave chase. The two of them stepped into the mud, making squelching sounds. They fell several times due to the slippery ground, both of them gasping for breath, their heavy breathing like a bellows, their hearts pounding like drums. He ran, he chased, he was like a bird with clipped wings. In the end, Li Chen caught up with Leon. He raised his right hand, which had been severed in two, and punched Leon in the back of the head, turning his already mangled hand into a mixture of flesh and bone. Leon's head, whatever it was made of, suffered no damage from Li Chen's punch. It merely elicited a muffled grunt from him. After that punch, Li Chen's stamina was completely drained. He bent over and gasped for several breaths before continuing the chase, exhausted. Like a zombie, Li Chen got close to Leon again, wanting to throw another punch. Suddenly, Leon turned around and Li Chen felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, letting out a muffled groan. Looking down, he saw a dagger stabbed into his belly. This dagger, made of some unknown material, pierced through Li Chen's ultra-thick armor without any resistance. Realizing what had happened, Li Chen's eyes turned bloodshot. He lunged forward with all his strength, grabbing Leon's head and biting down hard on his ear. Ah! Leon screamed in agony, pulling out the dagger and stabbing it into Li Chen's stomach again, repeating this several times. Li Chen completely ignored the stabbing, biting down fiercely on Leon's ear, then yanked it hard. Leon screamed, realizing that stabbing his stomach was not causing any fatal injury. He raised his hand, trying to stab Li Chen in another spot, but Li Chen quickly wrapped his arms around Leon's armpits, lifting the dagger-wielding hand high above. The two struggled for a while. Leon tried to push Li Chen away, but Li Chen's arms were like iron bands, tightly gripping his waist, making it impossible for him to move. In the struggle, Leon managed to slam his shoulder into Li Chen's eye socket, causing one of his eyes to become a bloody mess. Eventually, Leon's last bit of strength was exhausted, and the two stood face to face, embracing in the mud. Why can you do this? Leon asked, his voice choked with tears. Li Chen spat out Leon's ear. He wanted to say something, but suddenly, with his remaining eye, he saw a flicker of firelight on a small hill 400 meters away. The exhausted Leon felt a strong warning of impending death and wanted to evade. Li Chen bent down, burying his face in Leon's chest, holding onto his body tightly, leaving him no chance to move, forcing him to stand still. Let go of me. Let go of me. Leon screamed in terror, but Li Chen's blessing from the Earth Goddess took effect. A faint trickle of power surged from the ground into his body, allowing him to keep the frenzied Leon in place. Let go! Let go! Let go! Leon frantically elbowed Li Chen's back, causing Li Chen's back armor to dent. He was hit so hard that he spat out several mouthfuls of blood, yet he still held onto Leon tightly. "Let me go." Zzzzz. Bang! A sound of twisted metal rang out, and the struggling Leon Mon stiffened, then his body went limp, followed by the sound of a gunshot. A large hole appeared in Leon's back armor, his body shattered by a bullet, life rapidly draining away. If it weren't for Li Chen holding him, he would have collapsed into the mud. Ugh, ugh, ugh. Leon spat blood, and Li Chen leaned close to his ear. Speaking in a devilish voice, "Leon the Brave, the kingdom game is truly a lot of fun. Remember, I am the Goblin King, the enslaver of all races, the scourge of the world, the destroyer of gods, the sole rightful master of the monster forest, Arthur Louis Romanoff. Xin Shi Huang. Go to the goddess of life and give that bitch my regards. One day I will kill all her priests in this world, burn down all the temples, destroy all documents related to her, make the world forget her, and erase her from this world. Ha 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 ha. Ha!" After saying this, Li Chen's body went limp and he collapsed into the mud while holding onto Leon. His vision began to blur, as an ink-like darkness was about to engulf him. Just before losing consciousness completely, he saw Goblin Bao rushing over in a panic, carrying that oversized flintlock. Li Chen thought to himself that this guy actually waited until the end to fire, but well done. Goblin Bao shouted for him, but Li Chen no longer had the strength to respond, so he threw away the flintlock and ran out of his sight, seemingly to call for help. Not long after Goblin Bao left, Goblin's spear came over. He had several arrows stuck in him, and was holding the head of the elf Wendini. Seeing that Li Chen looked like he was about to die, he casually tossed the head into the muddy water and ran off to call for help as well. Eventually, after an unknown amount of time, Miss Hannah appeared in his line of sight. Miss Hannah looked down at him from above, her beautiful eyes filled with shock and complexity. Sarso's kingdom, the royal capital, the main temple of the goddess of life. It was a grand and majestic marble building, housing a massive statue of the goddess of life, with other deities from the goddess of life system below it, as well as 375 statues of past heroes. These statues were meticulously polished by the priests every day, ensuring that not a speck of dust would touch them. But today, while the priests were polishing the hero statues, cracks appeared on the statue of the 375th hero, Leon. The on-duty priest, noticing this anomaly, hurriedly ran to find the high priest. The high priest was an old man with white hair, and with the help of several young priests, he arrived in front of Leon's statue, where the cracks had already spread all over. The high priest's cloudy eyes suddenly widened as he reached out to gently touch the statue. With a crack, the statue, covered in cracks, shattered into pieces. The high priest rolled his eyes back and his frail body fell backward, with a group of priests behind him catching him in a panic. The elderly high priest gasped several times, lamenting, "Leon the Brave has fallen." His voice echoed through the temple's dome, spreading throughout the upper echelons of the Sarsos kingdom along with the temple's bell, triggering a strong tremor. The representative of the gods walking among mortals was dead, and the balance of power among the four nations was disrupted. This news swept through the human nations like a storm, and the already discordant four nations began a series of military mobilizations. A heated atmosphere filled the air, as ambitious individuals attempted to seize a huge benefit from this incident, and this storm engulfed the entire continent. However, for the time being, this storm could not reach the monster forest. Li Chen's consciousness gradually returned from the darkness. He instinctively tried to move his body but couldn't even open his eyelids. After trying for a long time, he remained in a state of sleep paralysis, realizing that his body had not yet recovered, so he didn't force it. He didn't know where he was at that moment, but he could feel the soft animal skin and a warm sensation flowing into his body from the outside, which gave him a sense of security. He began to let his mind wander, recalling the last moment of the battle, when the hero was pierced by Goblin Bao's shot, and Li Chen sighed, thinking that this guy was just too damn hard to kill. He was just thinking about the hero when a pop-up suddenly appeared in his mind, shaped like the major event pop-ups that occur only when significant changes happen in the world, reminiscent of Mount and Blade. The first pop-up read, "You have killed the earthly representative of the goddess of life. Your relationship with the goddess of life, -100. Your relationship with the church of life, -100. Your relationship with the kingdom of Sassos, -100. Your relationship with the Sassos royal family and the nobility, -100. Li Chen clicked his tongue in amazement. Killing a mere hero had stirred so many people? Speaking of which, how could someone with the ability to single-handedly annihilate an army have a good relationship with the upper echelons of the kingdom of Sassos? If it were up to Li Chen, he would never allow an infantry regiment to run rampant in his territory. The hero's strength was roughly equivalent to that of an infantry regiment, and it seemed he was not under the kingdom's jurisdiction. So what exactly was the hero's position? What was the relationship between secular powers, heroes, and gods? Li Chen clicked his tongue again. His understanding of this world was still too limited, and he needed to enhance his information gathering in the future. He focused his consciousness on the pop-up, and immediately another one appeared. The news of the hero's death spread like wind to the ears of the adults. The world was brewing war. The four human nations were on the brink of civil war. The southern orcs were about to invade the kingdom of Sassos. Golden dragons were crawling out of their nests, crossing the sea to fly towards the dwarven mountains, and the demon race was moving south to wage war against the elven empire. My lord, it is time to join the fray. Li Chen smiled. This was interesting, very interesting. Killing a little hero could actually trigger a world war. Chaos was good. Only in chaos would he have the chance to reap the benefits. Li Chen cheerfully clicked on the pop-up again, and yet another one appeared. Your battle has attracted the attention of the god of war, a deity with no stance, only wishing to see war. Whether in one-on-one combat or large-scale battles, he would cast his gaze upon it, and you, my lord, simultaneously fulfill two of his needs. The god of war has issued you a command: become his follower, and bring him more war. Yes or no? The sudden attention from a deity made Li Chen raise his guard. He carefully examined the pop-up information and found that choosing to become a follower of the god of war would grant him a substantial boost in attributes. Vitality 20, Control 20, Stamina 20, Cunning 10, Social 10, Intelligence 10. Li Chen almost couldn't help but choose yes. With so many attributes, it would double his strength. He felt the hero's vitality attribute should be around 35. If he agreed, he could probably overpower the hero. But unfortunately, Li Chen still chose no. War was merely a means. He couldn't frequently use this means just to please a deity, as his own power would only lead to destruction through endless wars. A regime-serving war would only be temporary and pitiful. After choosing no, the system popped up another prompt. Because you rejected the god of war, he felt very angry. Favorability -10. However, he believes you will still bring him more war, so he will continue to watch you. Favorability +5. Vitality 3, Control 3, Stamina 3, Cunning 2, Social 2, Intelligence 1. Li Chen felt a surge of power enter his body. Wow. Even rejecting him granted attributes. This seemingly sadistic deity had some guts. If used as a tool, it didn't seem bad. He could allow some citizens to worship the god of war in the future. Li Chen opened his personal attribute panel. He had leveled up twice, which surprised him. Just fighting against the hero's team, he hadn't even landed a critical hit, and he had gained a bit of marginal experience to level up twice. He directly allocated the attributes to intelligence and added his specialization points to spells. Then he clicked on two-handed weapons. His proficiency in two-handed weapons had reached 82. After exchanging a few blows with the hero, he surprisingly gained so much proficiency in dual-wielding weapons. This is also reflected in the original mount and blade, where forging high-level weapons at the blacksmith's shop significantly increases forging proficiency. In this other world, heroes are considered top-tier units, so it's normal to gain 10 or more proficiency points after hitting one a few times. For the two skills to choose from, Li Chen selected Strength and Health. Strength increases the vitality of soldiers by 1 point. Troop cap +5. Health increases personal and troop health by 50. Additionally, there was another skill choice. Crossbow proficiency was at 54. He shot at the hero and gained over 20 proficiency points. Li Chen chose Proficient Crossbowman, which increases the proficiency of the troops crossbowman by 50 and speeds up loading. The musket was certified as a crossbow by the mounted combat system, so choosing this was reasonable. Running proficiency was at 67. He chose Unity, which reduces the movement speed penalty for large troops, as more troops mean slower movement, and this skill can significantly improve that. Reconnaissance proficiency was at 43. He selected Night Stalker, which increases troop movement speed at night. Tactical proficiency was at 25. He chose Loose Formation, which increases the damage dealt by archers to enemies. Command proficiency was at 72. He selected Combat Tips and Fortified, which increases experience points for leading troops and the chance to recruit captives. Management proficiency was at 37. He chose Simplified Military Management, which reduces the dinar consumption of simple troops. After a round of skill allocation, Li Chen's overall combat power increased. He then opened the family page, and his family level rose to level 2. The family level in Mount and Blade increases with reputation, which is gained through battle settlements and special events. Raising the family level can increase the number of troops led, with level 1 adding plus 25. Li Chen's current troop count is a base of 20 plus level 1, 25 plus level 2, 25 plus 10 from the skill choice, totaling 80 soldiers. With so many soldiers, Li Chen was very satisfied. The system-controlled troops increased, which was very beneficial for him to control the tribe. He then opened the warehouse to see if there were any dropped items. He didn't have high hopes. According to the drop rate mechanism of Mount and Blade, a sufficient number of enemies must be defeated to drop valuable items, and with only 4 members in the hero's party, the drops would likely just be a few bags of grain. However, when he saw what was lying in the warehouse, he was so excited that his eyes widened. Werewolf Serum removes negative status effects. Within 10 seconds of use, doubles strength, then rapidly loses stamina. There is a chance of transforming into a werewolf with excessive body hair growth, liver and kidney failure, and decreased sensory abilities. Mithril chestplate, a chestplate made of mithril. Only dwarves and mages can forge this precious mithril. Heroes chapter. Only those recognized by it can become heroes. Note: all races, ethnicities, and regimes with a certain population base will give birth to heroes. The worldview and actions of heroes will protect the races, ethnicities, and regimes from which they arise. Heroes are the spiritual embodiment of their respective races, ethnicities, and regimes. Only individuals who are extremely focused on collective interests will be recognized by the heroes chapter. We goblins need our own hero, Li Chen shouted, startling Miss Hannah, who was casting healing magic by the bed. The two stared at each other wide-eyed. Li Chen didn't expect to suddenly be able to move, and Miss Hannah didn't expect Li Chen, who had been asleep for 7 days, to wake up suddenly. Miss Hannah coughed and pushed the green energy orb from her staff towards Li Chen. He immediately felt an extremely comfortable energy enter his body, then spread to his limbs, healing his injuries. Li Chen blinked. His vision returned, and when he looked at his hands, the ones that had disappeared had returned. Wow! Miss Hannah, is your healing magic really that amazing? It can regenerate severed limbs. Miss Hannah rubbed her eyes, looking quite exhausted. It's not limb regeneration, it's reattachment. If you look closely at your arm, the scar from where it was severed is still there. Li Chen carefully observed his arm and indeed saw a faint scar. But my eyes. The eyeball was slightly ruptured and a healing spell fixed it right up. That's impressive too. After Li Chen finished speaking, the two fell into silence, unsure of what to talk about. After all, they were from two different races. Miss Hannah stood up. I'll go call your subordinates. Li Chen watched her walk to the door and called out to her. Miss Hannah, thank you. Miss Hannah paused for a moment before stepping out. Li Chen didn't know what she was thinking. She could have let herself die but still chose to save him. Was it because she feared that if he died there would be no one to restrain the goblins? Not necessarily. It wasn't something as simple as love. There were more complex motivations driving her actions, perhaps a consideration of what can you really achieve? Let me see. A few minutes later, Goblin Spear, Goblin Bow, 1 Ear, Goblin Big, and Dog Head which entered the room. Boss. Dog Head which howled like a dog and immediately knelt by the bed. Boss, you've been asleep for 7 days. The Dog Head tribe somehow heard that you died and has refused to pay us tribute. Li Chen narrowed his eyes, a dangerous glint shining brightly. It's fine. We didn't have time before, but now, we have plenty of time to deal with the Dog Head tribe. Previously, due to the hero crisis and the insufficient goblin population, he couldn't control the hunting grounds of the Dog Heads, and his tribe's relationship with them was quite tenuous. This relationship was very dangerous. What Li Chen wanted was complete control, and it was time to thoroughly deal with the Dog Head tribe. Li Chen looked at Iron Orc. Iron Orc, I will give you new blueprints next. I want you to manufacture a new firearm. Li Chen was ready to upgrade his weaponry. A single rain magic had rendered all the firearms in his troops useless, which was unacceptable. He needed weapons that could operate in all weather conditions. Given the current circumstances, he could only upgrade the matchlock guns to breech loading. Flintlocks, he had a relatively mature case in mind that he could directly copy. As you wish, my lord. Iron Orc bowed with his hand on his chest, his eyes filled with respect for Li Chen. After fighting the hero down to single digits, and finally defeating him through a duel, he had completely earned Iron Orc's respect. At that moment, he felt honored to serve such a lord. Li Chen turned to Goblin Spear. Goblin Spear, how many soldiers do we have left? Goblin Spear's eyelids twitched, and a flash of sadness crossed his eyes. Boss, there are none left, not a single one. It's just me and Goblin Bao now. Li Chen fell silent. What about Goblin Chang? The supplies? The squad leaders? Goblin Spear's face twitched. Boss, they're all dead, all of them. Li Chen's brow furrowed deeply, his fists clenched tightly, and he finally let out a long sigh. Sacrifice is the cornerstone of the Alliance's strength. Have someone collect the bodies of the fallen warriors and send them to Martyr's Mountain for burial. Goblin Big, go prepare. Concrete, I want to build a statue on Martyr's Mountain to remind future generations of this war that nearly led to our extinction. To remember the fallen 10th Punishment Battalion. A week later, Li Chen recovered his health. He brought the Goblin hunting team into the troops and restored the 10th Punishment Battalion's formation. The newcomers received the blood-soaked battalion flag at Martyr's Mountain and swore an oath in front of the statue of the fallen. Li Chen stood in front of the 10th Battalion, glancing back at a statue over 10 meters tall, composed of multiple individuals. The base of the statue was made up of the bodies of goblin marksmen, piled into a small hill, on top of which lay the hero Leon, who was being pinned down by the surrounding goblin marksmen. The expression on hero Leon's face was twisted as he struggled desperately, like a beast ready to break free from its cage and unleash terrifying destruction. The musket goblins rushed in from all sides, fiercely suppressing the beast. Below the statue, it was temporarily inscribed in a common human language. On April 6, 4353, the goddess of life blessed the hero Leon and his gang of 4 anti-intelligent creatures, who invaded the alliance of intelligent beings and were annihilated by the 10th Company of the Punishment Army at Goblin Fortress. In this battle, the 10th Company of the Punishment Army was nearly wiped out, with 812 casualties. Li Chen scanned the text, pondering that the creation of characters should be prioritized. It felt a bit off to have human writing on his monument. After the new 10th Company inherited the banner from the previous generation, they immediately began training. The new 10th Company performed quite well, as they were promoted from the hunting team and had some foundation. Li Chen assigned the troops to Goblin Spear and Goblin Bow, letting them lead the training. At this time, both had reached the maximum level of 5, one being a Goblin Warrior and the other a Goblin Sniper, with intelligence reaching 15 points, allowing them to fully understand Li Chen's military policies and regulations. What made Li Chen trust these two the most was that they witnessed the fall of the old 10th Company. There was an unshakable sadness and unwillingness in their eyes. These two already had a sense of honor and shame. They understood what an army was, and Li Chen believed that entrusting the army to them would pose no problems. Li Chen focused his energy on the development of new weapons, specifically the breech-loading flintlock. Flint is a common mineral, hard in texture, and can easily ignite when paired with a fire striker. Previously, when searching for sulfur and nitrate, the goblins had discovered something resembling flint, but at that time, production was not focused on this matter, and Li Chen didn't pay much attention, only marking the location on a simple map. Now that he had the time, he personally explored the area and found that the goblins had indeed discovered flint, and it was of very high quality. Li Chen relocated 200 goblins to the flint mine to establish a village for flint development. With the flint issue resolved, Li Chen began researching the breech-loading flintlock. At that time, the elf had used magic to make it rain, causing all firearms to malfunction, which infuriated Li Chen. If the troops had been able to use firearms then, he was sure they wouldn't have suffered even half the casualties against the hero. However, before the appearance of the firing pin and fixed ammunition, firearms really had no good solutions to weather issues. The flintlock's flint ignition could only handle light rain. If the firing mechanism was wrapped in oiled cloth, it could fire once, but after that, it would have to resort to bayonets. The steel factory had a room exclusively for Li Chen, where only he was allowed to enter, containing drawing tools and various parts. At this moment, Li Chen was using a charcoal pencil to sketch on paper, choosing to copy the 1819 model Hall flintlock for the new breech-loading flintlock. This was the world's first widely equipped breech-loading flintlock with a loading principle similar to that of the Franchette cannon. This gun's loading speed was much faster than that of muzzle-loading guns, and during shooting, there was no need to adjust the match, achieving a peak firing rate of 9 rounds per minute. Infantry firing in formation was also not afraid of open flames igniting black powder and causing accidents, allowing for a more concentrated formation. In short, the flint ignition mechanism was more advanced, with many benefits. However, this breech-loading gun was not without its drawbacks. It had poor gas tightness. Due to the gap between the chamber and the barrel of the breech-loading gun, a large amount of gas would leak during ignition, resulting in lower range and power compared to muzzle-loading guns. But that was not a problem. If the power was insufficient, they could simply increase the amount of black powder loaded for each shot. Once Li Chen finished the drawings, he tossed them to Tai O, instructing him to study the samples, and then began to tally the spoils of war. First was the great thunder roasted chicken mage. This fellow had been turned into minced meat by nearly 1,000 muskets, and the most valuable item on her staff, was reduced to rubble. Li Chen handed the rubble to Miss Hannah to see if there was any value left. Miss Hannah shook her head repeatedly, saying that the magical patterns inside were already ruined and suggested using it for firewood. However, there was still a gain. They found several high-purity magical crystal cores among the minced meat. Miss Hannah said that these magic crystals are artificially synthesized and contain a large amount of pure magical power. Wizards can make contact with the magic crystals through their skin and then absorb the magical power within to replenish their own consumption. At that time, Li Chen asked Miss Hannah where these things came from. Miss Hannah replied that they were synthesized by the Magic Guild, but she didn't know the specifics of how they were produced. This item is an important commodity of the Magic Guild, and only the Magic Guild in the whole world can synthesize it. At that moment, Li Chen's heart sank. What are magic crystals? They are energy storage devices. He still remembered that during the first illusion, the monster empire was destroyed by nuclear-like attacks that obliterated everything. With spells that have the power of nuclear bombs, Li Chen didn't believe that the magical power stored in the human body could cause such destruction, but with external energy storage, it made sense. Humanity in this world has mastered nuclear-like weapons. Li Chen made up his mind to figure out how magic crystals are manufactured. This thing is a strategic technology that needs to be mastered as soon as possible. The mounted combat system lived up to expectations, and one of the two choice skills included this technology. But the specifics would be discussed later. The remaining spoils included a shield the size of a pockmarked door, which was not made of any special metal, just a very thick steel plate, and was of no value. Li Chen had someone make a wooden box to store it properly. In the future, when he developed further, this could be put on display in a museum. There was also a wooden magic bow covered. In many magical inscriptions, the user could activate the inscriptions to make the arrows more accurate and powerful. A critical shot could even shoot an arrow straight to a kilometer away, with power comparable to a large-caliber sniper rifle. This bow was given to Goblin Bow, as using a firearm would waste Goblin Bow's DPS. This bow, even without magic, was still a strong bow, making it just right for him. Next, Li Chen took out the chapter of the hero from the mounted combat warehouse. This item was palm-sized, resembling a shield, and looked like a knight's job change item from the Fire Emblem. Li Chen was very envious of the power displayed by the hero and tried to obtain the strength mentioned in the article. However, after studying it for half a day and even dripping his own blood on the article, it still showed no reaction. He suspected that either he was not recognized by the chapter of the hero, or his influence was not large enough to meet any of the criteria recognized by the chapter of the hero, such as species, ethnicity, or regime. It was somewhat regrettable, but he can only store the chapter of the hero in the warehouse for now. After putting away the chapter of the hero, Li Chen began to fiddle with the mithril armor. This armor was thinner than Li Chen had imagined. Only as thick as a fingernail, yet as hard as a material with strong mutual interaction, weighing less than 2 kilograms, truly a miracle of material science. Li Chen was greatly shocked and threw a gauntlet into the furnace, trying to melt it down. However, he failed. With his current technology, he couldn't even get the mithril to glow red. Li Chen speculated that this material either needed to be forged with magic or required extremely high temperatures, regardless of which he couldn't achieve it. This set of armor could only be stored in the warehouse for now. In the future, if he had the opportunity, he could take it out to melt down mithril into molten iron. It would be a shame not to use such excellent high-temperature and high-pressure resistant materials for some industrial purposes. Finally, Li Chen opened a box and looked at the hero's sword inside. This sword was entirely snow-white, with many magical inscriptions on the blade, and the guard was a statue of a goddess, exquisitely crafted. Li Chen wanted to pick up the sword, but to his surprise, when his hand grasped the hilt, he couldn't lift it at all. This sword was absurdly heavy. Oh, resisting me? Li Chen felt a consciousness within the sword that was strongly resisting him. The magical inscriptions on the sword flickered between light and dark, seemingly absorbing the magical power in the air, making itself heavier and heavier. Am I going to be stumped by you, an object? Li Chen also got serious, gripping the hilt with both hands and exerting force together. He finally lifted the sword off the ground, but that was all it did, just barely off the ground. He felt like he was holding a heavy iron mat. Was he going to the battlefield to fight or to work out? If the sword couldn't even be swung and was cut down by someone, it would be bad news for the bodybuilding world. He directly threw the sword to the ground, baring his teeth and shaking his arm. Oh, I don't believe it. Li Chen lunged forward, trying several times but unable to lift the sword completely, exhausting himself in the process. During a break, he felt the consciousness within the sword mocking him. Li Chen's gaze turned dangerous. He had many production plans to implement and no time to tangle with a sword. He looked at the sword on the ground and coldly said, I know you can understand me. I'll give you one last chance to serve me, and your name will be known throughout the world alongside my army. As soon as he said this, Li Chen felt a wave of inaudible laughter coming from the sword. I am the pure sword bestowed upon the mortal realm by the goddess of life. Every one of my previous masters has been a hero of the goddess of life. Only great and holy individuals can wield me. You are just a filthy, lowly goblin. Li Chen fell silent for a moment, then laughed, starting with a light chuckle that turned into a loud laugh and then into a maniacal cackle. After laughing, he looked at the sword with a face full of mockery. You are nothing but an object, a tool for others to wield. Who gave you the audacity to be so proud? A hero? That guy's corpse was thrown under the tree in the underworld by my men. It will turn into a skeleton soldier and be killed by me for the second time, the third time, the 100th time. And you? Ha, filthy, right? Lowly, right? Come, let me show you what filthy and lowly really means. Li Chen lifted the sword and directly exited the steel factory, dragging it toward the restroom. This was exhausting, and he was sweating profusely. Passing by the blacksmithing workshop, Li Chen saw the ogre Dang Dang sitting in front of a large iron anvil, and his eyes lit up. Li Chen found a chain, tied it to the sword's hilt, and called out to Dang Dang. Dang Dang, come help me. Dang Dang, with a silly expression, dropped the heavy hammer and came over to Little Green. Li Chen handed the chain to Dang Dang. Here, Dang Dang, hold this and come with me. Dang Dang pinched the chain with 2 fingers and lifted the sword, following Li Chen toward the restroom. The restroom in the steel factory was an open-air rural latrine. Previously, production capacity was insufficient, and everything was geared toward production, so the restroom was poorly built and extremely foul-smelling. The stench could be smelled from a distance, and the sword sensed something, erupting in intense fear. No, no, filthy ogre, put me down, put me down. I command you in the name of the pure sword bestowed by the goddess of life. No, no, no. Dang Dang looked around. Ha, who's talking? Dang Dang thought he misheard and continued following Li Chen toward the restroom. The sword grew increasingly. Terrified, the magical inscriptions on the blade glowing brighter and the sword became heavier, but this weight was nothing to the ogre, who continued to stride toward the restroom. You can't do this. You filthy goblin, I am a sword from the heavenly realm, stop. Li Chen ignored the sword's screams and glanced into the pit. 120% saturation, a very rich golden mine. Satisfied, Li Chen looked at the sword, his face revealing a standard sinister smile, the kind where the corners of his mouth reached his ears. No matter what your name was before, from now on, everyone will only remember the name I give you. Shit. Sword. The sword trembled all over, frightened. Please, can I have another chance? Li Chen shouted at Dang Dang. Dang Dang, throw it in. Dang Dang casually tossed the chain into the pit and then started picking his nose. This pure sword, bestowed by the heavenly realm and used by the 375th hero, screamed in despair as it plunged into the filth. Juices splattered and a fragrant aroma wafted through the air. The pure sword was gone from the world, but a sword in the shit remained. After completing the epic masterpiece Sword in the Shit, Li Chen returned to his luxurious 120 square meter wooden cabin and began to contemplate the future of the monster nation, confirming the direction for future development. The name he gave to the nation was the Alliance of Intelligent Beings, with a flag featuring a circle enveloping stars, each star representing an intelligent race. The Alliance of Intelligent Beings would absorb various intelligent races from the continent as citizens, forming a multiracial, multi-ethnic nation. To maintain national stability, Li Chen would ensure that goblins comprised 60% of the core population and 80% of the military. Given the reproductive capacity of goblins, this was easily achievable. The superstructure would arise from the infrastructure, with the basic management unit of the alliance being small villages of 100 people. These villages would control land, cultivate it, and collect taxes. Each village would have a village chief and deputy chief, along with team leaders and their deputies overseeing agricultural work, and during wartime, the management system would directly transform into a military command structure. Li Chen sat at his desk, using the most precious ink to write and draw on parchment. The paper produced by the paper mill he was overseeing was inadequate for such important national policies, it was better to write them on parchment. He dipped his quill into the ink bottle and meticulously crafted the future of the alliance. Li Chen encountered a dilemma: the internal demand of the alliance, or rather, the economic issue. What are the demands of monsters? For humans, it is simple. People want food, land, housing, comfortable clothing, luxury goods, and to hold positions of power to realize their personal value. But what are the demands of monsters? After careful consideration, Li Chen discovered that there was some overlap between the needs of monsters and humans. For instance, food, housing, and warm clothing were all in demand by goblins, dog-headed people, and ogres. Li Chen defined this demand as basic needs, which all races must strive to address, and it also served as the foundation for their integration. However, once basic needs were met, there were divergences regarding advanced needs and self-actualization. Everyone knows the advanced needs of humans, the thoughts and resource mobilization people engage in to fulfill these needs form human society. Now the question arises, what are the advanced needs of monsters, and what does self-actualization mean for them? Without clarity on this issue, the alliance of intelligent beings would merely be a facade. Li Chen scratched his head in frustration as snowflakes fell heavily, instantly covering his desk with the crystallization of his worries. He felt that daydreaming was futile, so he stepped out of the room and went outside, casually grabbing a farming goblin and asking this promising young man, if you were given a chance to realize your dreams, what would you want to do most right now? The farming goblin was startled and trembled in fear when the boss grabbed him, but upon hearing the boss's words, he became excited. Could it be that the boss had noticed his diligent farming efforts and was going to reward him handsomely? Boss, the farming goblin shouted excitedly. I want a copy. Alright, get lost. Have you finished planting the fields? No? Then why aren't you out there farming? All you do is copy. That will only harm you. Instead of wasting time on that, you might as well cultivate a few more acres. The farming goblin ran away in tears. Li Chen pulled a few more goblins and asked them about their dreams, receiving the same responses as the initial farming goblin. Li Chen was speechless and went to find the dog-headed shaman, asking him if he had any dreams. The shaman's eyes turned into crescent moons, and drool began to flow. Boss, my dream is to find 10 female dog-headed people of different colors and then, really copy. Get the hell out of here. Li Chen kicked the guy into the water ditch, thinking the shaman might express a desire to learn more advanced spells or something similar, but instead, his dream was so simple. Li Chen then ran to the blacksmith shop, wanting to inquire about the dreams of ogres, but when he saw Dang Dang sitting by the large anvil, hammering away while picking his nose, he hesitated. Maybe it was better not to ask. Well, since we're here, Li Chen pulled out a potato and tossed it to Dang Dang, asking, Dang Dang, what is your dream? Dang Dang cracked the potato. like a sunflower seed, poked his enormous pinky finger into his nostril and dug out a lump of rich ore, pressing it against the beam, waiting for the high temperature to bake it into an S-like raisin. What is a dream? Li Chen explained, it's something you really want to do but can't do at the moment. Dong Dong's large, pointed head underwent a brainstorming session, his eyes gradually losing focus as the mysteries of the universe were being unraveled. I just want to wait until Jojo and Mimi grow up and find them a good partner. Li Chen didn't expect the ogre to say something so normal, but upon reflection, it seemed, wasn't that still a copy? Alright, Li Chen gave up. Inheritance and reproduction were indeed the greatest needs in the current tribe. Before enlightenment, the internal needs and self-actualization of the monsters would not be liberated. Now, Li Chen was here asking questions, akin to a reporter asking, "Are you happy?" Li Chen returned to his house, sat back at his desk and picked up a pen. He felt like he was getting somewhere. The monsters didn't lack higher needs, but their basic production hadn't been satisfied. Where would the monsters get their higher needs?